Hello, good evening, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another entertaining and exciting round of intense racing action in the Just Two Idiots Championship Series Season 12, as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. That's right, folks, the story of our LMP2 season continues, and with round 8 of 10 on the cards today, where exactly have we made our way to? Well, we made our way back to the Sebring International Raceway, a circuit that we have commonly visited over previous seasons, and one that is not to be forgotten about, and it's easy to understand why. At 3.74 miles in length, it's not the length of the circuit that makes it intriguing, nor perhaps the number of corners, 17 of them in total, but it is the rough and rugged road surface of the circuit that definitely keep everybody on their toes. 1/3 old concrete slabs in reference to its former use case as what was an army air base during the Second World War, the Hendricks Army Airfield. Well, ever since the 1950s, this circuit has gone to realism, indeed a thought of racing down runways, and then made a reality of racing down runways with plenty of corners woven in, and then the other 2/3 of the circuit with modern developments have been the inclusion of modern asphalt. And what it means, you've got smooth asphalt for 2/3 of a lap, and you've got some old bumpy concrete with plenty of transitional seams over the final third, and that means you have to set a car up not just to be able to conquer the corners, not just to be able to conquer it straight, but also to be ready for the bumps and shakes as you make your way around. Indeed, you may have seen it in real-world footage with regards to the World Endurance Championship, and you'll also see it here in our LMP2s, whereby you can have the smoothest possible car making your way around the asphalt, only to find out as it makes its way over the concrete seams, the suspension will shatter, it'll completely clatter, and driver and car will not be seen again. However, if our drivers do get it right today, they'll be able to survive the bumps, they'll be able to survive the smoothness, and they may just be able to come out on top and pick up a huge haul of points, and that is going to be the key trick. But where are my manners? Allow me to welcome you to this post-round broadcast from Circuit Side as you tune in tonight, catch up all the racing action which did occur on Wednesday the 8th of April 2026. We're bringing to you as if we're live, slightly delayed on this Saturday the 11th of April 2026. We do apologise for the slight delay, but it was due to a slight mix-up in being able to get the footage from the race. However, we've got the footage now, and therefore we're not going to let you down in making sure that you're brought up to speed with all the racing that occurred as we head towards our season finale. Now, we should formally introduce this round by its name, and that name being sponsored by none other than Gabay, our number 22 driver, who'll be making his debut for this season today, and this round being known formally as the Blart Mattress Sockless Sleep Fest GP. And well, I do wonder if there's a bit of story behind that one, perhaps watching a 12 hours of Sebring event in the past, and it did involve a Blart mattress and Sockless Sleepling, but either way, thank you for Gabay to the name for this Grand Prix, and therefore we very much look forward to bringing all the action from it. And in terms of our schedule for today, times in Eastern Daylight Time, EDT, or Universal Coordinate Time -4, UTC -4, as we can see in approximately what will be around about 7 minutes time. We'll make our way into our qualifying session, 20 minutes in duration, or drives out of the circuit with a limited number of laps to go for pole position, and that'll be due to get underway at 10 past 10 this evening. After which, at approximately 25 to 11 tonight, we'll be making our way to the grid for our 60-minute Grand Prix race. Another 60-minute race, an hour of intense action, and if the second Magny-Cours we visited last time was anything to go by, well, this could be a round that's definitely going to be filled with thrills and spills. In the content, if you have myself, my name is Paul Walsh, and of course you're catching all this racing action on a weekly basis on the YouTube channel Paul's Productions, and feel free to subscribe if you want to stay up to date with all the latest broadcasts on the Just Two Idiots Championship Series Season 12. Without further ado, let's make our way into the story of the last 7 rounds and bring it up to what you need to know coming into this one. For as we can see, as we continue to make our way around the globe, we have returned to the US of A, and it is our return now to the US of A, it's where we stay. Because last time out, we were in France at the Circuit Magny-Cours on the 1st of April, but it was no April Fool's joke there as our drivers took on the infamous French Grand Prix circuit, as whilst it may be overshadowed by Circuit Paul Ricard, I can tell you one thing, it's definitely a round that caused all the other rounds prior to it to be overshadowed intensely. Firstly, the weather conditions. We saw a circuit that was very wet going into qualifying, and it gradually dried up, and qualifying was all about waiting out for the circuit to be at its driest point, and the driver who got it done right when it came to qualifying was none other than simply Steve, who returned to the grid after missing the last couple rounds and delivered an absolutely sensational pole lap by the best part of 1.1 seconds over his rivals, of which it was none other than Knotavin and Tonlo fighting for the right to be second and joining him on that front row. But when we did go racing, we had a drying circuit that continued to dry up until when the rain came back, and when it did, it downpoured tremendously, and it was all about the transition to the wet tyre. Now, at the time, of course, we had our 3 belligerents at the very front of Knotavin, Simply Steve and Tonlo, but it was Simply Steve and Tonlo who decided to come in immediately on lap number 19 as the rain arrived right at the midpoint of the race. But meanwhile, Knotavin decided to go one extra lap, and that was the differentiator because Knotavin had a spin on the open lap and he span all the way to the back of the field. He fell 20 seconds off of the field, but he roared and romped his way back up to catch up to leaders at a sensational rate of knots. And when the rain arrived, well, immediately Simply Steve and Tonno, who had been fighting hard, they opted to come into the pits, go to the wet and play it safe. However, Simply Steve had a spin coming out the pit lane. Meanwhile, Tonno did not. Meanwhile, Knotavin, staying out of the slicks and braving a 20th lap, he was able in the end to cause a 14-second overcut. Yes, one of the biggest margins I've ever seen, ladies and gentlemen, try to be able to pull off with the overcut. A 14-second overcut that took him into lead and 10 seconds ahead of Tonlo. However, the story wasn't done there because Tonlo tried to chase him down and was doing very rapidly in doing so. However, a late spin for him meant that suddenly Simply Steve was able to take second back and Knotavin was able to cruise to victory, although I don't think he was taking it anywhere near easy given the treacherous conditions. And in the end, your order in terms of your podium was Knotavin taking his 7th win of the season, ahead of Simply Steve and Tonlo just missing out on second place by only tenths at the line. But what a race it was, and there were plenty of heroic performances further down the order as well, but it really was one of those rounds where it was about being on the right tire at the right time and having the confidence to take on the conditions. And you could say here today at Sebring International Raceway we may see similar, given the fact we have had rain coming into the practice session, and we are forecasted to potentially have the risk of rain coming back at some point today, whether it be in qualifying or the race. So therefore, well, get your umbrellas ready, and our drivers will need to get their wet tyres ready, because this could be a very similar situation to the circuit of Magny-Cours, where the Sebring circuit will suddenly see a downpour and everything will be turned on its head. But after this round, we continue the theme of being in the US all the way to the end of the season. Round number 9 being at Sonoma in a week's time at the Sports Car Alternate Layout, and we'll bring things to a close on the 22nd of April at Road America, the full course, and it will be the picturesque tour of the Wisconsin countryside with our second crown jewel event and a 90-minute or 1.5-hour race to bring the curtain down. But as we come into this round and we talk about our calendar, well, let's talk about our circuit specifically. And it is, of course, the international layout of Sebring's International Raceway, located near the town from which it takes its name in the Highlands County of the state of Florida. Well, we've been to Florida once, we come back once again, because of course we were at the Miami International Autodrome earlier on this season. And a huge thank you to iRacing.com, not just the brilliant circuit maps, but also the absolutely fantastic simulator as a whole, and it all merges together to give you what is an absolute brilliant premier circuit. Now, of course, the two-dimensional image really lives up to the fact that this circuit is two-dimensional. It has very little, if at all, elevation change, and you would expect that given the fact, of course, it is situated on the former site of a runway. You can't exactly have a runway that's got multiple elevation changes on the concourse. But sarcasm aside, the key point being around here is that our drivers will have to deal with the fact that in dry conditions, this circuit doesn't offer too much of a challenge when it comes to the elevation change itself. But in wet conditions, as we may see, well, that becomes very different, because a flat circuit means you don't have water run, and therefore the water will stay stationary, and particularly on the old concrete sections of runway where there's no drainage, and that means the water will pool very aggressively on the concrete slabs. And that's something our drivers will need to be very careful of, because whilst there is plenty of drainage on the asphalt, which runs all the way from turn 2 all the way round to turn 14, so begin on the exit at Gender Being Bend going in towards Bishop. Meanwhile, the concrete slabs are from turn 14 all the way through to turn 1 at Gender Being Bend, so from Bishop to Gender Being, and that's where the water will really sit, and also where it'll be at its roughest. But many of these cause household names, and as our drivers roar the way down the start finish straight, as to deal with the high-speed left-hander gender beard, we're coming into the very tight section of turns 2, 3, 4 and 5. Get it right through there, they'll make the way out into Big Bend, and it'll be absolutely flying down, all the way down towards turn number 7. They'll be flat out every step of the way before they make the way into the hairpin of turn number 7. Onto the brakes, it'll be sharp, it'll be fast. The low-speed corner there, giving way to a fast complex of Fangio turns 8 to 9, named after Manuel Fangio, and it'll be up towards Cunningham Bend at turn number 10, the sharp 90-degree right-hander. Coming out to that corner, it'll then be into Collier at turn number 11, and we'll see our drivers there have to be very smart with their lines in the dry, let alone in the wet, given the fact they'll then need to come over to the left-hand side to open up Tower Bend through 12 and 13, another sharp right-angled right-hander before heading down towards Bishop Bend at turn 14. Flat out all the way in the dry at least, and heading in towards the start of Le Mans at turn number 15, and as they make the way from right into left, it's then going to be into the sharper version of Le Mans at turn number 16. Get it right through there, and they'll carry all the speed onto the Allman Straight. There's only one corner to go at that point, and it will be, of course, Sunset Bend, named after the fact that when it is a race day and you're heading into the evening, the sun will set and you'll be looking directly into the sun in the evening. And for our drivers, well, will they be blinded today? Not so. There's plenty of cloud around, which there is. And as they make the way through the final long right-hander, he'll be onto the start-finish straight to do another lap or see that checkered flag. But in terms of rules, a quick reminder before we go racing, because we can't go racing without rules. Car setup-wise, this is an open setup championship, which does mean that drivers bring a setup of their choosing to each and every race day session. Now, drivers are required to drive the Dallara P217 LMP2 machine. It is our LMP2 season, of course, so therefore that is for the purposes of consistency. And then we will see our drivers all use the same car. However, their setup is completely open, so it comes down to driver, their understanding of the car, and their confidence levels in marrying the two together. Qualifying-wise, an open qualifying format shall be used. So what that means in layman's terms is that much like a real-life qualifying session, you will see every car potentially out on circuit together. There is no independent qualifying for each individual driver, so they can step on each other's toes, or we hope we don't see that. And also, it does mean they can siphon the slipstream off one another, particularly if you've got teammates out on circuit. Now, drivers have 6 flying laps available to them to set the qualifying time after an initial out lap. So therefore it means they are limited, and when we do have a lap time in the region of 2 minutes, well, understandably 6 laps actually is going to be quite a nice number of laps to be able to get the job done, because you take the out lap plus the 6 flying laps, so you do it all together, and you're looking at about 15 minutes in total, and well, that's almost the entirety of the qualifying session of 20 minutes. Now, our Grand Prix race shall commence via a double file rolling start, as is the tradition of the racing in the LMP2 category for the Just 2 Idiots Championship Series. There are no mandatory pit stop requirements. If a driver thinks they can do it on what is a no stop versus a 1 stop versus 2 stops, they are welcome to show as much strategic flexibility as their heart and brain desires. Now, each driver has 2 fast repairs available should they need to use them, and a driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 16 or more instant points. Should they get to 32, they will be disqualified, but we haven't seen that so far this season, and long may it continue, and all race trading may be conducted post-race rather than live, and therefore it does mean if we have any incidents between drivers, they will be looked at after the racing, and our drivers will need to cool down and settle down as they continue on their racing efforts today. But as we do make our way back to circuit side, well, just before we do go into our qualifying session, let's bring it up to speed with the championship standings after 7 rounds of racing. We begin with the overall Drivers' Championship. And as we can see here, heading into the Blunt Mattress Sockless Sleep Fest GP, it is Knotavin with 7 wins out of 7. It's not quite a perfect score. However, he's come very close. And the night racing driver from Canada right now is looking unstoppable on 67 points ahead of Tonlo. And well, the theory is today, should he take an 8th win in a row since the start of the season, he will head into round 9 not just as the firm favourite, but he could wrap things up with a round to spare. Now, we should point out that after this round, drop scores will be applied. There is a single drop score over the season, so do keep that in mind. So the points you see today, they will narrow as of next round when we do look at the standings going into round number 9. But at least here today, for round number 8, you've got the full scores on display there, and that margin definitely growing. It's an absolutely incredible margin. Tonlo, to be fair, the BDS racing driver, well, he found his equal last time out in the form of Simply Steve, but he's also still putting on the hunt versus Knotavin, and he holds that second place there by 10 points over Cat Daddy. The plain racing cars driver, whereas our top 3 last time out definitely had plenty of fat tricks and heroics, it was a very anonymous day for Cat Daddy by comparison, in the fact that he only took 6th place in qualifying. He didn't really show off too much. He played it very safe in the changeable conditions there, and he saw his pursuit of a podium curtailed by several offs in the wet conditions in the second stint of the race. But he was able to do a very good job in finishing 5th and holding off DC at the end by 1.8 seconds, and that's important given the fact that Cat Daddy and DC, well, the two of them very close in the standings, only at 16 points between the two of them, and the Bong Life Motorsport driver right now wanting to get into that 3rd place if he can. Well, the Canadian driver still got a bit more work to do if he wants to be able to achieve that. And our number 3 driver there does have a bit of growing pressure, 16 points behind from Garlic Dog. As the other member playing race cars, the team having another double points finish last time out. And we'll give you an update on the team's championship very shortly. We can see Garlic Dog now into 5th place there ahead of Nicolator, with the Nick Square driver not quite having the happiest day in the wet conditions in the second day of Magny-Cours. And understandably, he's got a bit more work to do there if he wants to reassert himself inside the top 5. However, he is ahead of his teammate of Beaver. He has moved ahead with Beaver not on the grid last time out. Only one member of Nick Squared on the grid, and Biker Pilot further behind now on 142 points of 3.8 racing. Pancakes sits in 9th place of SimCity Racing ahead of Speed Squad's Simply Steve, and Empty Dust there. Best of the rest in 11th place, only 2 points behind. However, it's good to see both of them on the grid today, and I do believe therefore it's going to be a big opportunity for them both to be able to move forward, as Omega, the other member of 3.8 Racing, sits in 12th currently on 113 points. It's 12 points back to Jen for Night Racing, not on the grid last time out, but we're very pleased to tell you that Jen is is back today, so therefore able to make this trip to the circuit in the USA, not able to make it to France last time out. And then we do have only 4 points behind Urco there for Bong Life Motorsport. AJ completes your top 15 ahead of Squilliam, who is back once again, which is absolutely brilliant. The Vision Motorsports driver, who we have sorely missed since the early stage of the season. He is very rapid. He could be the man to take on Knotavin today. And then we do have Corndog, Pebble, Spook Dubs, and Black Bob completing your top 20. And behind the Jamaican Privateer, outside the top 20, not to be forgotten about, we do, of course, have Paperbag and Sector, both on 15 points apiece. Behind the Scuderia, DNF and Privateer drivers, however, are your 0 points drivers of Sassy for Cornhub Motorsports and Sim City Races Dickinson. And that is how the Drivers' Championship stand after 7 rounds. As the overall standings in the Teams Championship, here we can see it is Night Racing who lead the way, currently on 371 points ahead of Plain Race Cars. However, do keep in mind the fact that whilst it was a day of heroics for none other than Knotavin, with Jen absent, only one driver score points, and in a team's championship you need both of your drivers to score the points wherever possible. It is not a solo effort, and that is how Plain Race Cars are continuing to close the gap. Although it was a 5th and a 10th for them, they'll know their charge has been blunted a little bit compared to what it could have been. The fact they are continuing to close that gap means that this team's championship right now is definitely looking to be tightening, and therefore can Night Racing with both their drivers today reopen that gap with only a couple of rounds to go. Nick Square, they fall to 3rd, although they have been in 3rd for some time. They haven't lost 2nd place, they are staying in 3rd, but the problem is they're really falling backwards now, with only Nicolator on the grid and Beaver not making it onto the grid last time out, and it does mean they are now at risk of falling into a battle for 3rd place with Bong Life Motorsport. And should they do so, Bong Life Motorsport are bringing 3.8 Racing with them, with the 3.8 team definitely having another solid performance last time out and holding on that 5th place spot. Speed Squad on 238, they are 17 points behind, but they in turn are the best part of 35 points ahead of BDS Racing in 7th place, with SimCity Racing 8th there, really showing the gulf between the top 7 and the rest of the field. And then halving their points, or just over halving their points, is Vision Motorsports in 9th place, with Cornhub Motorsports 10th with 25 points, and it's 15 points to Scuderia DNF, who complete the team's championship standings. But with that, and without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for us to make our way into our qualifying session. Who exactly is going to put it on pole? Well, it's time to find out here in the Blunt Mattress Sockless Elite Fest GP from Sebring International Raceway. And well, what a change of conditions it's been. It's been very cloudy over the course of the practice session after the rain has gone away, but the clouds have not. But now, as we make our way into practice, it does look as though, in fact, well, the sun is starting to come out a little bit. So it's crazy how the best part of half an hour can make things change. But again, we do have the rumour there could be some rain coming at some point later on today. So as our drivers make the way out, well, oh, there's a few slides loose there. And well, that was not synchronised, I can promise you that. As Garlic Dog and Pebble both go very sideways coming out the pit lane. And I wouldn't be surprised there if that is going to be there. Oh, goodness me, that was a bit of a graphical artifact. I've not seen that before. I do apologise there if anybody flashbanged on their TV. And well, it's not by design, ladies and gents. So I think there might be a bit of a little glitch there for iRacing. Although I wonder if that has been reported. If not, we might have to report it after this broadcast. But hopefully that does not come back later on today. But as our drivers all make the way around, well, what do we need to about qualifying? We can see some small patches of water out there, some small puddles, which have continued on from the practice session, albeit the circuit is now mostly dry. I wouldn't be surprised if you consider this circuit to this point to really be what would be a very lightly damp circuit at certain points. I don't think you can take the greasy rating anymore, as we do have such a predominantly dry track. Although you can see Knotavin just behind there, weaving from side to side, trying to get a bit more lateral tyre temperature in, and everyone will want as much heat in the tyres, because this circuit is not going to be offering much grip. Now, if you're wondering what happens when a circuit dries up after rain, well, you can imagine prior to rain, a circuit is covered with rubble. It's had marble and it's had rubber laid down. Rubble there is rubble and marble added together. It's a bit of a conglomerate. And indeed, we might have to say that for the dictionary, as we on the target goes round there at cutting a bend. And number 28 driver losing the rear, but trying to get it back pointed in a straight line immediately. And well, an easy mistake to make. And that comes very nicely to what we were going to say. Before the rain arrives, because you have so much marbles and rubber laid down into the tarmac, what it means is naturally the tarmac provides some extra grip to the tyres. When the rain comes along, it washes most of that away, and suddenly when you've got a dry circuit, the rubber needs to be laid down once again, and the grip levels of the circuit are dramatically lower than perhaps you would expect. And that's why you're seeing quite a few drivers having these snap spins as they're coming into braking zones in particular, or just coming through corners, because what they're essentially doing is they're coming off the brakes, for example, as we saw from Knotavin there, and as they come on through, well, they're expecting the rear tyres to really grip grip up nice and early so they can then get the front tyres to grip and turn in, but it's not quite so. The rear has no grip, the front does have a degree of grip, and suddenly the rear lets go, the front pulls the car into the corner, and the rear simply goes, right, well, I'm going to come around, but I'm going to come around at such a rapid rate of knots, you're not going to be able to get the car pointed correctly. And, well, that could be a bit of a worry here, so it might be advisable for drivers who are out there in the qualifying session at the moment, of which we do have a grand total of 16 drivers here today, so our biggest grid in some time for this season, which is absolutely fantastic. It might be an idea to do all 6 qualifying laps together, but really take your time in the first couple as Garlic Dog goes round there at turn number 5, and we'll see Pebble make his way on around there in the all-red number 48 machine, and as he does so, will not make a mistake there. So many drivers making mistakes, although I can tell you Simply Steve sat in the pit lane at the moment, so is Emmy Dust, so is Nicolator, AJD and Gabay, and also do believe Cat Daddy currently sat in the pit lane, so not everybody out there. But including one of the drivers out there, we need to say a warm welcome to this driver from France, number 93, and that is Springflower, and well, making his debut for the purposes of this season. He has previously raced in the Just 2 Idiots Championship Series in previous seasons, but this is his debut for the LMP2 edition of the Championship, and a warm welcome there to Springflower, and we look forward to seeing what he can do in the Dallara P217 LMP2 V8 powered machine with Gibson 4.2 litre V8 engine, but in the best part of 603 brake horsepower out there. Very lightweight car with a very powerful engine. These cars are just one step away from the likes of GTP and also the classic IMSA prototypes. But as we do Springflower going on through, coming out of turn number 16, and down the Allman Straight. Well, right now, your number 93 driver here trying to get the first lap of the board. I think they all are on their slick tyres at the moment, and I don't think anybody would be on wets here. It's not wet enough. They've just got to be careful of the patches of water, which you can see a few of them there as he does make his way in towards Sunset Bend, and that's the risk factor as he comes around. But you touch a little bit of that water, and, well, suddenly things can very much change. You see the small splashes and flashes of water behind the car as he goes over the concrete slabs, and, well, that's all the sign there of the water that gets trapped, essentially, on the concrete seams and does not get shifted, unlike on the tarmac surface, which he now makes his way onto. But as we do look to at Nicolator, finally going out there and deciding to leave it as late as possible, as we get the first qualifying lap on the board from Pebble, a 2 minute 0.5, and then it's going to be Pancakes, who raises the bar immediately by 2.5 seconds, and then Knotavin goes even quicker than that, a 1 minute 54.361. But keep in mind, of course, I think we've yet to really see his true pace. As he comes on out and onto another lap, he's onto his second flying lap here, and all these drivers right now just trying to tease out exactly where the grip is, trying to rubber the circuit a little bit more, get some tyre temperature, and also make sure they know exactly where the water is. They don't touch any of the water, which, given the speeds they'll be approaching the tiny puddles, and the fact these puddles now will be quite minuscule, it shouldn't be as much a risk of aquaplaning on slick tyre, but you always want to be careful, because every time you do touch a patch of water, you do lose a little bit of surface temperature in the tyres, and 1 to 2 degrees is definitely going to have a big effect there, whether it be in the Fahrenheit or C. But as we see Knotavin making his way on around, well, we do look a little bit further down the order at the moment to Etme Dust, who's yet to get a lap of the board on an out lap currently and getting himself all warmed up. A lot of drivers now already getting themselves set up. Squilliam puts in a response at the very top, and, well, that's an impressive response there, 54.350. So the Vision Motorsport driver here definitely has vision today, and I think that vision came to him in a dream, and that dream is to try and beat Knotavin, albeit only 100 separating the two of them at the moment. Ooh, we're going to have a very dicey qualifying session if this continues. I can tell you that, ladies and gentlemen, because Knotavin has had competition for pole position. It's not as though he's dominated every qualifying session, as Jen, Knotvain's teammate, the other iRacing car here, the number 99, goes on to another lap. But with that was a nice 55.64 to nearest 100th, and Jen going third. We've only got 5 times out of our 16 drives on the board at the moment. We're expecting a few more. But speaking of a few more drivers to go out there, you can see parked up at the moment, and that is none other than Gabay, and indeed the driver who sponsored the name for this round of the championship, and we're very happy to have him making his debut on the seasonal grid today. Has raced in the community previously on several occasions, but making his debut in the LMP2 championship today. And a warm welcome to our number 22 driver. A big thank you to him for the title today for this Grand Prix. Indeed, some of them so inventive, to be fair. I swear it's just tongue twisters at the end of the day and trying to get me into a sensible state. Well, I haven't quite got one wrong yet, I don't think. Although I do love the challenge, and we'll do keep the names coming, guys, because we love it. Indeed, it puts a massive grid on my face. And I've already got a massive grid on my face because we're getting to see LMP2 machines absolutely go all in. Some very capable drivers out there, as Urko goes to 4th place, parks up, toes back to the pit lane immediately, so we don't really get to see any more from Urko. Albeit I suspect it was one and done. He's going to go again very shortly, and I think he's putting enough fuel in for 2 laps, 1 for the out lap and 1 for a fast lap, and reckons that given the nature of the circuit, that's all you need. As DC makes his way on down here, the Bong Life Motorsport driver, who's definitely been one of the hidden talents on the grid over the course of this season. He's not been in the spotlight too many times, but he has been fighting for those top fives versus the light of Cat Daddy. As he comes on out of the final quarter, we're going to jump on board with DC for a flying lap of the Sebring circuit. He's making his way down towards turn 1 and bringing the car over to the right hand side. The Bong Life Motorsport driver now on the attack in towards the opening bend. Excuse me, ladies and gents, I think I'm going to sneeze. I do apologise. In fact, no, I'm not. I've got rid of the sneeze as he comes through Gender B and Bend and, well, managed to get rid of the sneeze. That may come back very shortly. And coming in towards turn number 3, onto the brakes now. 150 meters from quarter apex, trail braking down to first gear. And now through the left, right, left as he comes in towards turn number 5. And, well, dropping the first gear there through the apex. Decides to drop a gear. I wonder if in reality he wants to stay in second there, just help with wheel spin. But either way, DC seems to say we do not. And coming down through Big Bend and up towards the hairpin. This is left hand side for his brake marker. Braking at about 175 meters a quarter apex, given the entry speed, and coming down to first gear, an apex speed of 45 miles an hour there as he clatters the curb, and now flat out up towards Fangio Bend. Right to the left here, going through the quick puddles and getting ready for the braking zone of turn number 10 at Cunningham. Looks to his left hand side for the braking markers. Here'll be those cones and braking 150 meters a quarter apex down to first gear, through the right, in towards the left, and as he takes it very tight there through Collier Bend, takes a lot of curb and having to fight with the steering wheel. That's the one thing you don't want to do, is hit that curb on the inside of Collier if you can help it. Unsettles the car, but he settles it back down now, going through Tower Bend, and we'll first get all the way from there, now up towards Bishop Bend at turn number 14. Into the final third lap is when now transitions back onto the concrete slash. You can see the carrier starting to shake around there as he goes through the transitional seams, and braking about 100 meters from turn 15, taking it nice and easy, not attacking the apex curb there. Lovely line from DC. Now bring it all the way over to the left to open up the right hander on Lamont. Understeers a little bit deep, but just about keeps it within track limit. Not the perfect line there, but DC will know he'll need to correct that next time around. And heading down the Allman Straight here towards Sunset Bend. Will look to his left-hand side, not for his brake marker, but for his turning marker. You'll see the cones there. Starts to point the car. Points a bit prematurely. Resets it, points it again. At 50 metres on the cones, he turns in, but goes very deep. Hold up a second. That's not rain starting to fall, is it? No, I don't think so. I think that's just a little bit of what is fluid on the windshield. But DC there making a little bit of a mountain coming through Sunset Bend. Not the line he would have wanted. And therefore gets ready to go again. A bit of a scrappy lap. But understandably, I think at this point, just trying to find the grip levels out there. They may all be struggling. It was a 55.97, so DC did put a time in for 10th place. However, I think there's a lot more pace out there. There's at least a second he can untap from that. And, well, meanwhile, as we do have Jen jumping back up to 4th place, the 54.185, well, the lap times are coming on down on Knotavin and Squilliam right now, definitely in a bit of a postcode of their own lap time-wise, both in the 52s, or at least chasing them. Currently, Squilliam at 53.01, Knotavin at 52.764, and then you've got the best part of 1.1 seconds to Cat Daddy in 3rd place. And well, I'll tell you one thing, the playing race cars driver here really coming on strong in qualifying. He could be, of course, one of his best qualified performances of the season in some time, albeit he has been in some very good positions, particularly many of you may remember, of course, what was Mosport and also none other than Mexico. So going up through the first half of the season where it all went wrong in the opening laps for Cat Daddy when he had a prime opportunity at Mosport to potentially take a win. However, it's not about how you start the season, it's about how you end it. And I can tell you one thing, he's looking to end this on a high. And can he find a high today? And also, bearing in mind that we've only seen one podium for Cat Daddy this season. That was back in round number 3. But otherwise, he's had plenty of near misses to the podium. But can he put those near misses to bed and land his mark? Well, right now he's landed in qualifying when he's got a 4.5 tenths advantage over Simply Steve, who's just in front of him there in the very colourful liveried car. Indeed, I always think of it as the Van Gogh machine as he makes his way around. And as he does so, well, number 23 driver right now, much like Emmy does his teammate, looking beautiful, and the laps are looking good as well. But we're still waiting for some lap times to come in from Gabay and also AJ. Here is Gabay right now, heading towards the timing line. And what should number 22 driver going to do? Will this be a valid lap? The answer is going to be to that question. It is not. He's going to go on to another lap. So his first lap did not count. Track limit violation somewhere around there. But as we see the Font Cub car making its way around there, well, he's a privateer, but I do love that on the side. And well, that's in reference to a very particular website that I can't say for legal reasons, but I do love the fact that he's got the thinking man's emoji there. And well, very creative with the livery there, I can definitely say that. And good on you, goodbye. But for 8 minutes left in this qualifying session, and as he comes around, we look to Nicolator. And, well, one of the two members of Nick Squared, of course, Beaver not here, unfortunately. So Nick Squared being solely represented by the blue machine of Nicolator. And he goes into 7th on a 54.634. But meanwhile, the benchmark set by Knotavin has been raised to a 52.714. Now, 3 tenths practically faster than Squilliam. And Squilliam, to be fair, on a fast lap here. Now, on his penultimate qualifying lap, as Epney Dust off camera goes to 4th place. And Squilliam right now hoping that this can be a bit of a magical lap here as he fights with understeer coming out of Collier Bend. And that's the problem right now with the setup they're running on this car. Now, do you run a mixed setup? Do you run a setup that's meant to work half and half in the dry and the wet? Do you run a purely dry setup? Or do you run what is a wet setup in preparation for the risk of rain coming back? Well, you've got to go over a dry setup at the moment. But the problem is, I think a lot of drivers, because the way they've got the cars set up, we're expecting perhaps a bit more grip from the track itself. They're not getting that grip. And that's why you're seeing these little moments of understeer midway to the corner. But you're also seeing what is this oversteer sometimes on the corners as well. The tyres are just not being able to find the grip that they want. And that is the problem. So therefore, the drivers have to try and adapt. They have to try and adjust the setup they can in qualified. Or they've got to adapt their driving style to be able to do so. It's going very late into the corner. Well, that's by design for Squilliam. He's setting himself up for one last flying lap, some final shots and trying to take home will be pole position. So let's jump on board with him as he goes around for a flying lap. So the Mission Motorsports driver now knows it's do or die as he heads in towards Jen to be in bed. In towards the opening left-hander here, coming down from 6th to 5th gear, an apex speed of 129 miles an hour as he makes his way onwards now up towards turn number 3. Onto the brakes, and as he comes hard down the gearbox to 2nd gear, clips the apex of 3, over the curve of 4, and that in towards turn number 5. Goes nice and late into the corner. That's the line you want in carrying more speed then in towards Big Bend. Now coming down from turn 6 in towards 7, and as he does so, well, getting ready for the hairpin, bringing the car to the left-hand side, underneath the Coca-Cola billboard, and getting ready to go onto the brakes. 3, 2, 1, onto the brakes he goes, 150 metres a quarter. Apex decides to V-shape off the hairpin there, try and get better exit speed. Will cut over the curbing in order to be able to shorten and straighten the run out. That's legal, and now going through Fangio, and up towards turn number 10. Bringing the car to the left-hand side shortly, and as he does so, well, onto the brakes, 150 metres. All the way down the gearbox to 1st gear. Nice gentle approach to the apex there. Tight on exits, turn 11. And I think that's what's catching out there. Clips the curb, it understeers him wide. That's why he's losing a 10th. Now into Tower Bend, he gets it all sorted out. But of course, a little bit of weight distribution transfer always does upset the balance of the car into the next corner. And Squilliam there just nails Tower. Now make his way onwards here. He has had a personal best middle sector. So he is going some in Squilliam. And now heading towards the brains over turn 15. Down the gearbox to 3rd gear, down to 2nd. And now into left-hander, fighting with the car as he opens up the main part of Le Mans there at turn 16, really nails the apex. Oh, it snaps on him, and Squilliam, understandably, the frustration is going to be absolutely palpable there, and that was the car just simply saying it's a no-go. As Squilliam there, if he had got that nailed down, something tells me he could have been going for pole position there. That was looking a really strong lap in the second half, but unfortunately, he did not quite put it together. And, well, meanwhile, Cat Daddy carrying on through and right now battling with Jem for the right to be 3rd, and indeed the two of them very close together, and Epney Dust is not too far behind. 5 minutes still left in this session, and Knotavin right now is trying to go even quicker. In fact, he has gone purple towards the end of the middle sector, so Knotavin right now could be on course. Is he looking for a 51.9 here? I think that would be a big leap if he's able to do that, but I think we could be looking at 52.1 at least. Comes on through Sunset Bend then out of the final quarter. This is his final lap. This will be the last chance saloon for him. Oh, courage to the pit lane. Whoa, that is Jen hitting the wall. Squilliam's in as well, and Knotavin decides to back off. He has not improved as much as he would like, and therefore he's not going any further as he brings a cone with for good measure. He's picked up a souvenir underneath the front bumper, and he'll need to get that cone out before he goes racing, otherwise he's going to lose speed. And those cones, they are not just there as brake markers and not just there for simulation aesthetic. If you do get one caught on the car, you are going to be losing quite a lot of lap time. So the team are going to get that out very quickly. But meanwhile, Epney Dust goes on to his final flying lap, and we does not improve there. 54.316. Meanwhile, Urko does improve, and Urko right now looking quicker and quicker, but he won't be going any quicker because of the fact he has just completed all his valid times. Cat Daddy goes on to his final lap, a 53.472. We have got a really close middle pack. Look at that from 3rd, Jen, 1.1 seconds off the pole, all the way through to Nicolator in 9th, 1.9 seconds off the pole. Well, that's a grand total of 7 drivers separated by 8 tenths. You do the mathematics, that's a tenth from driver to driver to driver, and given the length of the lap, well, a 10th here really can be found in a single corner, let alone over an entire sector. given the way the Sebring circuit plays out, and also the fact you carry a lot of momentum from quarter sequence to quarter sequence, so it can be worth a lot. But Springflower won't be going any further into the pits, and completed all their laps, but 7th on their debut. They'll be happy with that. But the one driver who's yet to get a time on the board, AJ, currently will be starting 16th with no valid time set. Everyone else has put a lap out there. Edith Pebble has struggled a little bit to be 7 seconds off the overall pole time, but to be fair, get a lap on the board means he will be starting one step ahead of the 45 car if it can't get a valid lap together. And with 3 minutes to go, and with very limited time left, well, AJ right now just seeing if he can get towards a lap of some description. And he has been improving over the course of the qualifying session, but the problem is he has not completed the package, and that's the difficult part there. It's not easy at Sebring, and in fact you do need to keep it as good as you possibly can. Now, shout out to Yomega, he'll be started at 30th. He's completed all of his laps recently. He'll be quite pleased to be not too far behind Gabay, and also Pancakes. We're going to have a bit of a battle between those guys when we go racing. AJ still weaving his way between the corners. We stay with your 45 driver. Lovely livery on that car, it must be said. It's good to see AJ back out there once again. He was one of our stars earlier on in the season, enjoying plenty of fighting at the Hockenheim. Well, unfortunately, we couldn't quite bring you a broadcast of all the heroics at the Hockenheim, if my memory serves me correctly, given how early it was in the season. Indeed, that was round number 3. We started the broadcast in round number 4, but as AJ comes out to the final quarter, will he now start his day with a bit of a positive? Will he find a qualifying lap out there? The answer is going to be, as he crosses the line, yes, it's 10th place there for AJ, 54.933, and he's given himself just enough time to squeeze in another lap here. And well, we look forward to seeing whether he can get it all together here. Can he potentially now move onwards? He has got to find a grand total of 9 attempts there to get ahead of Simply Steve, so it's not going to be any easy mark, but to be fair, he might be able to get this done. Meanwhile, DC on his final lap, we have had Etmidas complete his qualifying session 6th, and DC goes straight on there for Wildlife Motorsport on an outlap as well, so in the end brushes the barrier, and I think right now that's going to be it for his qualifying session. Gabay, meanwhile, in the Font Cub machine, making his way on around, and well, as he goes a bit wide there, coming out of turn number 60, you see all the water coming off of the curbing, and well, that's the one thing as well, when it has rained, you've always got to be aware of the fact the curbs, they will shake the rain last, given the fact those curbs do not get run on normally by drivers, they offer less grip, as meanwhile, off camera, Simply Steve goes to 3rd on a 53.337, a very impressive lap there from Simply Steve. He jumps ahead of Jen and Cat Daddy, but still only by 300 there, as Gabay crossed the line at 55.956, does not improve his position, but does improve his time, only what is 1,000th of the Pancakes. The Pancakes in the end will be pleased as punch not to have lost 12 plays, but Gabay really showed him that he should have been on the 6th row of the grid. AJ, meanwhile, well, he's got 45 seconds left to go, and I think he's just going to squeeze in this final lap. So let's stay with now our number 45 driver. He's the only driver who is on a valid lap that is going to be completed in the 20 minutes. Gabay's out there, does have another lap to go, but I'm not sure if he's going to be able to get that lap in. And meanwhile, AJ heads on down. But as he does so, 30 seconds left on the clock, 1 quarter remains. And what's it going to be here for him as he makes his way into a sunset bend? And we get this lovely high view camera angle here that shows you the enormity of the corner. As he goes a little bit deep from the wall there, so we'll lose a 10th as a result through the corner, up to 2 tenths as he heads towards the line, and AJ heads towards the timeline now. What's it going to be this time? He improves by half a second, but he stays 10th there on a 54.436, but a very impressive improvement, given all things considered. But qualified complete, ladies and gentlemen. Well, 20 minutes done and dusted, and well, it's Knotavin who takes pole position in the end by almost 8 tenths over Squilliam, but what a close qualifying points it was for 3rd place. That went to Simply Steve in the end, but it could have gone to any driver, all things considered, from 3rd all the way down to 10th place, and I suspect that's going to be a theme we are going to see over the race. We might have a top 2 and they go toe-to-toe over the distance, and particularly Squilliam and Knotavin, and it'll be the fight for the final spot on the podium that everyone else will enjoy. But now, speaking of things to enjoy, we do have the opportunity to enjoy a 5-minute warm-up period, and this is more for our drivers' benefit to make sure they get the right setup of the car, plus also they give themselves a nice comfort break. If they need to go to the bathroom, go do so before the 60-minute racing gets underway, plus also it gives them the opportunity just to perhaps get a little bit of a top-up of any liquid refreshment they need, although I wouldn't recommend eating before you go racing, even on a simulator. You may make yourself feel a little bit queasy, but the good news is, if you're tuning in right now and you do need a top of a snacks, perhaps you're thinking to yourself, you know what, I'm going to go put some popcorn in the microwave. You've got a chance to do so. Go do it, or if you need a bathroom break, if you need to go get your top up of your choice of liquid refreshment. Firstly, being British, I do prefer a good cup of tea, but to be fair, to each their own. You may prefer some Coca-Cola or another fizzy beverage, or you may even have a beer in hand. Indeed, it is the weekend, so why not? If you've had a stressful week, well, definitely make sure you've got yourself topped up, because when we do go green flag racing after our partial formation lap, It's going to be a plenty of entertainment race ahead, and indeed, round number 8 here, if it follows the theme of the last 7 rounds, you're going to be glued to your seat all the way through. Well, as we look to Squilliam here, well, the last time we saw Squilliam on a podium was back in the season opener. It's crazy to think all those many weeks ago, and the Vision Motorsport driver took second place to Knotavin in our season opener. Tonlo completed that podium, and intriguingly, we have no Tonlo here today, and that's something we haven't really talked about. And well, that's an unfortunate surprise, just for the simple reason Tonlo really has been one of the big names that's been fighting up there round after round. But if we lose Tonlo, we do have Squilliam. And, well, I was going to say, are they both the same person? Because we've never seen them on the same grid. But then I'd be a hypocrite when I say that, because of the fact we saw them both on the same grid in round number 1, of course. So, therefore, they can't be the same person. It's not Superman and Clark Kent equivalent. But as we do see Squilliam making his way on down, joking aside, well, we do hope to see Tonlo back on the grid with Squilliam at some point, because those two will definitely be looking to fight each other as much as they'll both be looking to chase down Knotavin. The man, of course, our championship leader, and, well, at this point, the man who seems to be trying to go on a flawless run of victories all the way to the end of the season. And he won't be flawless if he makes a mistake like that today, going through Collier Ben, albeit he has shown his aptitude for recovery. Indeed, the Circuit of the Americas in round number 6 is about showing how he handled things under major pressure versus Tonlo. Last time out at the second Magny-Cours, it was another test of pressure, but it was his ability to recover from a disastrous start to race, and also his ability to judge the weather conditions perfectly. There doesn't seem to be anything that you can throw at this man and he will not be resilient to. Indeed, he seems to have resistance to everything at the moment. It's way such a complete picture, but to be fair, he has had so many close calls with rivals, including his own teammate. And Jen, of course, don't forget, round number 4 at Mosport, Jen did take pole position. And unfortunately, if it were not for an error through turn number 3 on the opening lap at Mosport, there would be a big what-if question. Could we have seen a 1-2? Could we have seen Jen take her first win there and really lead home a 1-2 ahead of Knotavin? Well, all that's in the past. We've got to live in the present. And in the present, well, Jen today looking to definitely be chasing down third place, if not at least a top 5, albeit such a close competition. Springflower, our debutante, of course, being right in the midst of that competition for third place in the top 5. So therefore we look forward to seeing how he's going to get on. But with 16 cars here today, we normally have seen anywhere between 10 to 12 cars. Well, a few more cars on the grid, it does mean it's going to open up the battling even more. It's so great to see so many coming out at Sebring, as Sebring always does bring out plenty of drivers. It is a very popular circuit, popularised of course by the real world at 12 hours of Sebring, the annual race that forms part of what is the IMSA Sports Car Championship. And, well, an absolutely brilliant round of racing there. Given the fact, of course, in fact, I do believe it's the World Endurance Championship. Let me correct myself there rather than IMSA. Although Springflower does get it wrong coming out of the corner. And as he does so, going out to Tower Bend to the barrier as Urko makes his way on out of Big Bend, and we'll carry on. But mistakes can be very easily made. Those curbs in particular, the wonderful white and blue painted sections, they're not the same material as tarmac. They offer less grip, and also they are raised. Although the camera angles make them look very flat, they are jagged, and the thing is, when you go over them in these cars, they will shake the suspension around, but also the amount of water that's on them, well, understandably, the tyres that do mount them do not have grip, particularly in an acceleration zone, so the corner exit. You may suddenly find that if you dip the rear left tyre onto a curb, for example, the rear left tyre certainly says no, as Urko there decides to test the durability of the front end of his car and manages to take the front bumper entirely off. But as Nicolator comes down the start-finish straight, well, he gets himself set up there to practice a pace start. Indeed, taking it nice and slow before he headed towards the line. And without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, it's on Racing We Dine, as it is time for us to make our way to the grid for round number 8 of the championship here at the Sebring International Raceway in round 8 of season 12 of the LMP2 championship for the Just 2 Idiots championship. And we're about to get the Blow Up Mattress Sockless Sleep Fest GP underway. And as the drivers make the way to the grid, this is how they'll line up for round number 8 of the championship. Here's Knotavin, who takes pole position for night racing with an absolutely incredulous pole lap at the end by almost 8 tenths of a Vision Motorsport Squilliam. The night racing driver has started strong, but will that be the way he finishes today? We then do see behind our front row starters, it was a further 3 tenths back, but we did get to Simply Steve, who starts further Speed Squad. But how quick can he be today? Can he show that speed is better than strategy? Well, Jem for night racing not too far behind. The gap between the two of them, a grand total of what was in the end only 33 thousandths of a second. And then we did have none other than Cat Daddy for playing racing cars, only missing out by a further 3 thousandths in 5th place. The number 69 driver in the company of Urko for Bong Life Motorsports, who was a 10th for Drift, and it was only 6 thousandths to Empty Duster Speed Squad in 7th place. Springflower then at 2 tenths behind. The Frenchman making his debut, starting 8th, and will be very happy with that performance, but 9 is an opportunity for a top 5 today at least, and Nicolator will start 9th there for Nick Squared, just adrift by half a tenth. It was then a further, 5 tenths back, or half a second, to AJ the Privateer, but showed a lot of promise as qualifying went on, although I am hearing that AJ is starting for the pit lane due to a technical issue with the car, so hopefully they can get that resolved. Otherwise, we may be a car down before we got green flag racing. Outside, at the top 10, we have DC for Bong Life Motorsport as the formation that gets underway, and the Canadian driver in the company of Pancakes for Sim City Racing. We'll then have on row at number 7, Gabay making his debut, and our sponsor, of course, for this Grand Prix. He starts in 30th place at number 22 in the Font Hub Privateer machine, head of Omega for 3.8 Racing, who's 14th for 101, and then it will be Garlic Dog for playing race car starting 15th, and Pebble will be starting last but not least in 16th place there. And the American driver known has a bit of work to be done if he wants to pick up some places, but also he could just look to stay out of trouble, and he may be able to do well in this one. Well, the grid is all set, ladies and gentlemen. The formation lap is underway, as you can see at the moment, but it is a full formation lap here, not a partial one, and therefore it does mean our drivers have plenty of opportunity to get those tyres warmed up, but also this will consume a bit of fuel, and I need to be aware of that with regards to their strategic calculations. But it's Squilliam and Knotavin on that front row together, and we do look at them making the way around right now. Well, if you're in the shoes of Knotavin, you've got to be thinking to yourself, you've got what is the inside line coming in towards turn number 1. You've got the best defensive line being on what will be the left-hand side of the running order, whereas Squilliam is going to be on the outside. Therefore, he's got the best opportunity to carry momentum round. But of course, we go green when the leader goes green. They're choosing, and they can choose anywhere between the point of the safety car passing the pit entry line and what is the start-finish line, where we are forced to go green. So, for Knotavin, do you go immediately? Do you try to go coming out of Sunset Bend, or do you wait until the last possible moment, or go somewhere on that start-finish straight? If I was a betting man, I suspect Knotavin will try to go on the exit of Sunset. And the reason for that is, when you are on the left-hand side, you are on the outside of Sunset Bend. There will be a little bit more grip out there, even though we've had the rain, because the marbles and the rubber will be gradually pushed out of the corner. And being on the inside means you can't get the power down as much. So that's the best place to go. However, if he decides to go a bit later than that, if he did it halfway in the run to the start-finish line, he might be able to catch Squilliam out. Of course, Squilliam's got to watch. When they start in double file formation, it's always difficult being the number 2 car on the grid, because as we do jump aboard with Squilliam, this is what effect he gets to see out the cockpit. But remember, our camera is mounted to the right of the centre of the car, whereas he's sat on the left-hand side of the centre of the car, and it means, therefore, he's got to look for a narrow slit. He's got a window to left him that you can't see on this roll cage camera. He's got to be looking out of that to try and gauge when Knotavin going. But, of course, there's always human reaction time, so he's got to try and react to when Knotavin goes, and these cars go very quickly. So it's always hard being number 2, whereas, meanwhile, if you're simply Steve, who starts in 3rd here as we look on board from his car, well, he has a clear view of the leader. He gets to see when the leader's building the pace and when he gets to go. And the Speed Squad driver here normally will be in the best place to try and attack Squilliam and look to move into 2nd by the end of the opening corner of Genderbeam. But further on down, Gabay, who we jump aboard with, well, he's starting further down on the 7th row of the grid. So the American driver here will get to see when the whole field goes in front of him, and then he'll look to go as well, and he'll be itching to go and see if he'll pick up some places. But speaking of an itch to scratch, ladies and gentlemen, well, we've got 60 minutes of racing to scratch off here today for round number 8, and it's not too far away from going green, because Knotavin, well, there's the safety car down the Auburn straight here. A bit of weaving on the inside there for a few drives, but all those on the outside now, they've done all the weaving they can. They haven't got much more space to play with, and therefore the tyres are warmed up as best as possible. The brakes are all heated up, and it is time for us to get this Grand Prix underway, ladies and gentlemen, as we see Knotavin take us through the final bend, and it'll be to 60 minutes racing we go for round number 8 of the championship here at Sebring International Raceway. And here we go, it's lights out, away we go for the Blunt Matches Sockless Sleepfest Grand Prix as they roar the way down towards turn 1. But as they do, it's a good start there from the Knotavin. Squilliam right beside him, but losing out a little bit as they make their way to the opening corner. And Cat Danny and Urko fighting hard there. Jen just staying ahead for now. But in towards turn 3 they come here, and it looks like a little bit of splashing further back. Some inside line water being picked up. But everyone's taken through the opening couple of course. That's 2-1 between Cat Danny and Urko. Still fighting the way out. But Urko does squeeze ahead for now. In towards turn 5, gets his nose in there. But Urko on the outside line double clearing for Long Life Motorsports. Meanwhile, further back, Yo Mega's into the barrier. It's got roll for Yo Mega before it's really got started, so we'll get a replay that when we can. He drops to the back of the field. AJ's not left the pit lane, so it does seem as though his car's out of the race before it went green flag. But meanwhile, plenty of fighting further down the order. We see Pancakes there, looking up the inside of Garlic Dog. Can he get it done? And the answer is going to be yes, he should be able to. As now Garlic Dog has to go deep. In fact, there he gets a lot of power hosted as Pancakes. He loses out as a result of a bit of wheel spin, and suddenly that's going to be back up for contention here as they make their way through Fangio side by side with Pebble following. And onto the brakes they come, and well, Pancakes still refusing to give way, but Garlic Dog will hold it around the outside there and take that place back. But what's happened to Emily Dust? He's right in the middle of the road. Everyone takes evasive action. Emily Dust has gone very sideways, carried out to Cunningham Bend. I think there's been a bit of instant there as Urko's gone round as well. Where on earth has Urko gone? He's somewhere on the camera. There he is. He's lost it. How on earth has he managed to get to the catch fence there at turn number 11? I'm not quite sure. That's not normally where you see a car disappear to, but he comes back on there, but definitely almost ends up in the next runway. But meanwhile, trying to run away at the very front of the field is Knotavin as he makes his way on around. And I'm hearing in my ear that AJ has made it racing, albeit they are still looking at the car there. I think there's a technical issue in the pit lane with regards to the car of AJ, so it is still being looked at, although don't quote me on that. As meanwhile, Knotavin makes way through. There is AJ, in fact, and AJ right now in a heavily damaged car, albeit multiple laps down at this point. But meanwhile, we come back to your leaders. I'm not quite sure what's happened to AJ there, but meanwhile, Knotavin pushing onwards as he makes his way towards the timeline to complete one lap. Plenty more to go. So it's Knotavin who leads ahead of Squilliam, followed by Simply Steve. That's your top three, separated by 1.5 seconds. Jen sits in fourth ahead of Cat Daddy, followed by Springflower outside the top five in sixth place. There's DC ahead of Nicolator, followed by Pancakes. Garlic Dog meanwhile still fighting here with Gabay, and Gabay up the inside. And the Funk Hub car now moves up into 10th place there, continue to charge forward. And I think Gabay here really left a lot on the table when it came to qualifying, it would seem. Meanwhile, Empty Dust and Pebble fighting. Empty Dust goes around the outside of the all-red machine of Pebble and moves back to 12th place after his early spin. Omega's into the pit lane for repair work, unfortunately, so that car's going to fall further down the order, but he will use up one of his two fast repairs. But very exciting opening lap, and the excitement is going to continue now as Pancakes and Gabay together. But Gabay's now looking for a move here. Will it come into the hairpin? I don't think so from 3.5 tenths back. That'd be the mother of all sins, but he does go a bit late on the brakes there. Just taps Pancakes on the rear, and well, Gabay losing a little bit of plastic on the front of the car, a bit of carbon fibre, but he gets away with that. But that could have been an absolute heroic dessert, turning into a villainous moment there, but not quite so. He's not gone onto his dark side arc as of yet. But the Funk Hub car definitely looking aggressive there. He's looking very quick. He's just got to temper that speed a little bit as he gets closer and closer to the cars in front. Meanwhile, looking to DC, battling with Nicolator for 7th place at the moment. And Nicolator on the back, but understeers wide, fighting with the car there. Nicolator almost losing it coming out of Tower Bend. So easy to do there with a dirty air off the car in front. Once you understeer going in, you want to try and overcorrect it with excessive steering on exit, but the problem is you then try to get the power down. The steering wheel's even tighter than it was before, and with more steering lock and more power going into the wheels, naturally you start to overpressure the rear tyres and you start to cause them to uncouple from the tarmac, and that's exactly what's happened to Nicolator there. So you'll learn from that one very quickly. When it goes wrong, you've got to be patient. You can't put more steering wheel in. You can't suddenly go, actually, no, I've got to turn harder. If you're still planning to get on the throttle when you do, you've got to make a decision. Do you leave the throttle a bit more, or alternatively, do you loosen the steering wheel? It's got to be one or the other. You can't do both. As he makes his way through Sunset right now in 8th place, still chasing after DC and Springflower, and well, this could definitely be a race, but right now at least the battling's on the road, but it will turn to battles in the pit lane. Knotavin starting to open that gap a little bit more. Squilliam now 1.4 seconds back with Simply Steve there in third, and right now this top three definitely all starting to spread out a little bit here, and it does seem as though all three drivers trying to put their best possible laps, but Knotavin right now on that previous lap was 7.5 tenths quicker than Squilliam, and he was almost the best part of the whole second faster than Simply Steve. In fact, he was 1.1 seconds quicker now that I correct myself, and Simply Steve at this point I think just trying to hope that Jen does not catch up with Cat Daddy in 5th place watching on behind. We're back to the fight for 6th place between Springflower, DC and Nicolator, who's trying to make himself the third party in that engagement. And we look back to the rear of the number 93 now, and we can see our Frenchman here. We're doing everything right thus far, but there's still more work to be done as he heads up towards Cunningham Bend. Now, at this point, when you are starting to fall into the clutch of the battle behind, it's very difficult here because you want to catch up to the top five. But Cat Daddy at the moment is lapping a little bit quicker and is pulling to a gap of 2 seconds. So that distant draft is now being lost. So Springflower naturally is going to have to think more and more about going defensive. Or does he play the game? If he thinks he's equal to the pace of DC, does he let DC go? Oh, that's a big snap there coming out to Tower Bend. And when it only takes one small mistake and DC will be let go down through. Nicolator's going to think about getting involved there. And that's all going to work out, and we can see our number 5 driver queues up behind here. But the food for thought, as we were coming on to, is the fact that do you potentially let the guys put pressure on you go and then try to stay with them and save fuel and tyre life on the back of them? As Nicolator there taking a very wide line coming in towards Le Mans Bend. That's a legal line, we should point out. And it was all to set up a run down the straight. He's getting a double toe here, and Nick Square's driver right now looking to the inside. He's going to have the overspeed here, but does he have the confidence on the brakes? He sees the doors open here. Does he put the key in? He does. He goes for it too while they come in. But right now, Springflower trying to hold it all the way around the outside, but a little bit up to steer there due to the bumps in the road. And coming out, Nicolator will take that place, but great respectful racing between those two. So now Springflower falling down to 8th place, but his race not done yet. I think right now he's just going to fall into a bit more of a passive situation where he's got to try and follow these two and hope that Nicolator and DCA are not quicker than him and actually overlaps to the point they can break away, and B, that perhaps they'll fight each other a little bit and then they win to stay nice and close and save some fuel. But the thing is that Pancake's here, currently running in 9th place. He's now hoping he can get onto the back of that. So is Gabay. They're all queuing up. Etmy Dust is also still recovering. So there's quite a battle going on for that 6th place. The top 5 seems quite settled. Whereas the second half of the top 10 right now, it could be all jumbled up within the next couple of laps. But meanwhile, speaking of things all being jumbled up, well, we definitely had a bit of a jumbling up of things right at the start of the race with regards to some exciting moments when we were in green flag racing. But just before we come to some replays, we've got Urko here on the back of Garlic Dog. He looks up the inside once. Doesn't quite make it happen. We do need a replay of what exactly happened. And to Urko coming out to turn number 11 to see him end up on the outside of the circuit and actually going between the barriers on what's turn number 12. Something that doesn't normally happen. Indeed, it's a rarity, but there's a lot of runoff area there. So that's why we don't have the sealed barriers. It's normally a place where cars are ushered behind when there has been a big incident. Normally, it's none other than Collier Bend. At this bend in particular where the incidents happen, the cars have to be put behind the barrier as quickly as possible. Not they have the incident somehow at turn 11 into 12 and end up making the way behind the barrier by default. But meanwhile, we'll come back to Gabay. He has got Etmy Dust close behind. And right now they make the way through Bishop, and well, who's going to be taking someone's king at the moment if we're playing a game of chess here? Well, it does seem as though Etmy Dust thinking about that move. He is still close there as they roll the way out to Le Mans corner, and Gabay goes deep, runs wide. At this point, Etmy Dust is just going to simply go up the inside and say thank you very much, I'll take that off of you. And well, now the number 24 car up into 10th place, still on a recovery drive, still has got plenty of time to try and make up the place he lost. He started 7th, he'll want to get back there at least. You always want to finish at least where you started, otherwise you want to make up those places where you can. But Urko meanwhile, oh, tapping the rear of Garlic Dog, and in the air difference of braking, and also I think the overspeed there. And Urko, I think, fault. Garlic Dog was going to a little bit deeper, and he wouldn't have been as close as he was. And then taps on the rear. They both survived that, but that would have been a high-speed knot. That would have been about 15 miles an hour difference between the two cars. And for Urko there, well, a small tap can have big consequences, but it seems as though both cars are okay, at least for now. But that could have been absolutely dangerous. But still, they keep it together, and both drivers seem to be okay at the moment. But Urko definitely wants to make the move. But the thing is, there's a difference between wanting to make the move and making it happen. And right now, he's got to find a better way to make it happen as he gets close. Although, to be fair, I don't think there was any malice meant by that contact, just a small innocent mistake. As you ride aboard with a Bold Life Motorsport car, all seems to be well with it. Although, of course, I think both drivers there will have had a bit of a scare. That would have been, as the pro would say, a bit of a brown trousers moment. And we'll later the brakes, you can see Urko, the way he brakes, he is so much more confident under braking. That is the delta between them. But meanwhile, we come to DC, battling with Nicolator for 6th place. DC right now under pressure. Nicolator still trying to find a way through here. He's all over the back like a bad rash. And Springflower, meanwhile, is falling backwards. Well, as they fight, that is going to be around the outside of Garlic Dog that Urko goes through turn 10. So gets it done in the end. Made to go the long way round. And to be fair, stoic defence there for Garlic Dog, but just not having the pace to keep him behind. And Urko being unleashed now into 12th place. His next target is 8 seconds up the road. It will be Gabay for 11th place. But back to DC versus Nicolator we come, and these two still fight each other as they roar their way onto the Allman Straight. And well, for almost 10 minutes the race complete. Understandably now, they're starting to focus more and more fight over the position, with Springflower being dropped and Pancakes and Etmy Dust there a bit further back. I think both drivers at this point wondering now, what's the plan? Do they make it happen on the strategy, or do they have to try and make a move on Springflower based on the circuit? Well, I think it's too early. Now, we have normally seen for these 60-minute races, indeed we've seen for practically all of our races so far this season, including the Crown Jewels, what it is effectively a one-stop race. But right now, don't let that stop the race in action happening here, as it's going to be DC on the right, Nicolator on the left, in towards Gender B, and they come, and at this point, point. DC on the inside. That's not the best place to be if you're going to fight it all the way round. In the end, because he will have a lower exit speed, and that's going to enable Nicolator to carry more speed to the inside of turn number 3. But now, can he find a way to switch back, or does he try and go around the outside? He's going to try it around the outside. That's the inside of 4. Now the outside of 5. Here, he's going to have to think about switchback unless DC gets the ball right off the corner. And, well, he does have a little bit of power oversteer there, but Nicolator has even more. And DC does, in the end, hold on to that 6th place. But, my goodness, what a fight. But look at how that fighting has brought them all back together. 5 drivers together, and this is going to be Epmy Dust here taking a sneak peek up the inside of Pancakes. But in the end, well, Shrove Tuesday was a couple of months ago. He's not going to be able to deliver that straight away and making his way in towards turn 7. Well, right now, Epmy Dust staying close as he powers his way onwards, but it's not working out. He can't quite take a nibble out of that 9th place yet. He'd like to take a bigger bite, in fact. He's really going to try and chomp down on it here. And onwards he goes, up the inside, and Pancakes the end has no answer to it. But to be fair, I don't think he needs to answer it other than let it go at the moment, because if they start fighting, they will lose the back of Springflower, Nicolator, DC, and suddenly this 5-way fight for 6th place would break up into smaller, isolated battles. Gabay, meanwhile, staying with this group. Although assisted to a degree by the fighting that's going on in front, he'll be hoping there's more fighting to come. But if he can get within at 1 second of Pancakes, I think he's going to feel as though he's really a big part of it. Now, meanwhile, with all this fighting, what about the top 5? Well, we can see here, your top 3 are breaking away so quickly, they've run out of our camera. But meanwhile, Jen and Cat Daddy, well, these two still together as we need to look back. DC falling down the order there, coming out of Le Mans Bend. And, well, he's lost out there to Nicolator and Springflower. We're going to need to get a replay of that. I think he's had a bit of a moment coming through Bishop into 15. But there we do see, and we're just looking up the inside, but it's too far back there. That's trying to intimidate, trying to get DC to outbrake himself in towards Sunset, but DC's not going to fall for that one as they roar the way on around. Look how close it's going to be. And Springflower, they're not having the most momentum coming out the corner. I think Springflower really is struggling with the car when it comes over the bumps on the concrete. I don't think that car's set up to ride the slabs by comparison with the tarmac. I think he sacrificed the final third of lap to have a much stronger first 2/3 of lap, and, well, finding the balance is key here today, and if he hasn't found that balance, he's really going to suffer as the race goes on. As Nicolator is being allowed to walk away a little bit at the moment. And meanwhile, Pancakes here we ride on board with your 10th place right on the round for SimCity Racing, and we're coming out to turn 5. A bit further back there, but of course he has some great visibility of what's going on in front. He can react to it potentially if it does go wrong, although normally it does go right, all this battling. And speaking of that battle that's going on, well, here's DC defending. Epmy does try to go around the outside, so DC really here and to use the brakes and the tyres quite in earnest compared to his rivals here, and this is not going to help him as he goes deeper and deeper into the race. It is going to only increase the wear and the degradation to the car, and therefore it may cause it to be slightly off pace the deeper we go into the opening stint, given the fact that, of course, he'll be wearing those tyres down, and with it the natural grip that's an offer. And he does still glued to the back in there, trying to continue that recovery drive to 7th place as a minimum. But this battle definitely on tender hooks at the moment as we look down over the front of the Speed Squad car, and coming out the corner, lovely run out the bend there, coming out the tower, wiper on there to clear some debris off the windshield, and he's going to go round the outside here through Bishop Bend. It's going to be too wide all the way through, gives the space to get the inside of turn number 15, onto the brakes they both go, and well, DC's going to stay there, but he goes a little bit wide, and in the end the understeer just catches him out, and it's going to be Epmy Dust taking that place. Lovely move from Epmy Dust in the 24, and DC, to be fair, did everything he could to try and go around the outside to get to Le Mans Bend, but in the end just ran a little bit too deep off the corner, and Pancakes now will be looking to go on the attack with Gabay as well. And Epmy Dust now trying to chase down Springflower and bring him back into the fold, and also make sure that Nicolator doesn't get too far away. But what a brilliant set of fights between these guys. And meanwhile, at the front of the field, Knotavin only putting up a distant fight with Squelliam. Indeed, this is called a long distance battle, whereby it's all about lap time right now, but Knotavin seems to have a natural lap advantage. And when you consider the best lap of the race has been a 53.52, set by a race leader, compared to everyone else who's lapping in the 54s and the 55s, well, I think Knotavin right now may have turned the pace down a little bit to save some fuel, and also just manage that gap. Simply Steve, 3 seconds behind versus Squelliam. The gap is still growing in the favour of Squelliam, and then you have Jen and Cat Daddy behind, who are a little bit closer by comparison. But Cat Daddy over the last couple of laps has been pushing, trying to close the gap to Jen, and Jen in return has been responding with equal laps. So therefore, it does seem as though 3rd, 4th and 5th could come to a tasty battle later on. But we are our leaders, at least for now. It is going to be a battle. I think it's going to require a mistake or a very different set of strategies in order to really open up the doorway to that battle. But as we start to close some doors towards the front of the field, at least for now, we're going to open some doors with regards to taking a look back in time, as we do take a look back at some of the action from the start of the race. So this was how our race started, of course, as all the field made its way out to the final corner. Well, Knotavin, being your pole sitter, and in the end decided to stay close to the safety car and went late rather than early. And the idea being here was to shorten the run towards turn 1. It worked out. Squilliam did respond very well at the race start. However, as they made the way through that left-hander, Knotavin in the end was just able to hold on through Jen to be in, and Squilliam found himself under a bit of pressure from Simply Steve. But all these drivers coming on down quite nice and early, but Dust, it didn't quite go right through the first few quarters for him because he was too wide with none other than Springflower. A little bit of rub between the two of them, got the power down, made his way through that left-hander at turn number 5, and we're just lost out there. Springflower very sideways down, I think having to correct the car at the last possible moment. Brilliant battle between them, but Springflower did get ahead. So what exactly went wrong for Dust? Well, you had to go a little bit later on this open lap to find out. And this is where it went wrong for the number 24 driver. It was in towards Cunningham. Looks like the inside of Springflower went all in. And as he did so there, well, a bit of contact between the two of them. No malice meant, and the whole field had to segue around. And then he does turn sideways. So I think we'll feel as though he was squeezed at the apex, but he was given some space. I think just the slight rub of the two cars was the difference. But then we did have this for Urko. And, well, what exactly happened to Urko is the question. The answer is, the Long Life Motorsport driver, he came through Collier Bend late on that lap, lost the rear, tight on exit there, with tight steering lock and a lot of power, going down to cold tyres, and just glided his way to the green. A very interesting incident there, but to be fair, there's always a first time for everything. We did have this, meanwhile, a little bit later on lap number 2 for Pebble. And this was Pebble having a bit of a moment down towards the hairpin as he was being chased down by Urko. Onto the brakes he went, and as he did so, went straight on there, tried to avoid locking up the brakes, and lost the position there to what was Urko made his way on past. Then we had a little bit of a moment for Squilliam on lap number 6. The man in second place trying to chase down the leader, but as he was pushing harder and harder, well, in the end, all the push came back to pull him off the road because he went wide at turn number 5 and in the end bounced up onto the exit curb and had to straighten the car out there to make sure he did not do any more damage to his laps. That was really all the big moments from the start of the race, ladies and gentlemen, as we make our way back to your live racing. And as we do come back, we've still got plenty of time left on the clock. 43 minutes, and with that, I'm sure we're going to see more than 43 instances of two cars going side by side, or attempting to, because Dust and Springflower and Nicolator together, and, well, we have seen Nicolator be caught up. Springflower with Dust there, but powering the way down the Allman Straight at the moment. DC Pancakes and Urko a bit further back by comparison, so gaps opening up there between drivers. And what I do believe, as they roar the way on around, we have formally lost AJ for this race due to a technical issue with the car, and therefore we are still down to 15 runners at this point. It's good that we still got 15 out of 16 going, and indeed an absolutely packed grid today. But as we do see Dust here, putting another lap together, not quite able to get closer to Springflower and Nicolator that time round. Jen and Cat Daddy, meanwhile, they're definitely getting closer to each other here. And it does seem as though your number 69 driver, hoping that perhaps he might be able just to inch this battle forward a little bit. However, it could be all a bit of a ruse for strategy, understandably. It might be simply see what his pace looks like and then back off a little bit, save some fuel, and think he can do it after the pit stops or when one of them pits. Of course, we don't know who's going to get the undercut on the other. You know, Dust here, well, I don't think he's worried about undercuts at the moment. He just wants to take a cut out of this place. He'll be trying to go for 7th place here. As we ride aboard with the Speed Squad driver from Norway. And right now, trying to show it how the European way. Given the fact he's battling with a fellow European in front of him. And then it's the American and Nicolator just in front of the pair of them. It's great we have drivers of different continents racing in this series, and indeed plenty of talent around the world being showcased in the Just2Idiots Championship Series. We'll get our number 24 driver here with his talents. Well, the problem he's got is the fact he's up against two very talented drivers, and we do know that Springflower, in terms of his approach to run, he's not the fastest out there, but he is a very smart defensive driver, knowing knows how to position the car. And of course, Dust and Springflower did have that little altercation that led to Dust falling down the order through turn number 10 on the open lap, as we brought you the replay footage, albeit a little bit of a contentious one, but I think it might be considered to be a rated incident given the way the two cars came into contact. But as we do see both coming through, well, both drivers there understand that Springflower more so than Dust, but that would have been through the dirty out the back of Nicolator's car. But now here comes Dust with the speed down the Allman Straight, gets it closer and closer. Does he peel to the inside here at the last possible moment? If he's going to do it, he's going to have to dive it. Here he goes. No, he does not go for it there. But what's quite interesting is the fact he wasn't really closing at a rapid rate of knots. Now, was there much fuel saving going on there? Not necessarily. I think the Springflower's running the faster car for the straights compared to Dust, who's gone for quarter speed. And that's why he's able to stay so close here as they get ready to go towards Jen to be a bend. But will he send it up the inside this time? No, he backs off there, saves the fuel, saves the tyre life. But Dust definitely has a car but it's more attuned to these medium and high-speed bends compared to the car in front, but he's losing out on the straights by a mile an hour or two in clear air, and that is making a difference. That's why he's inching closer and closer, but right now I think he's really just trying to get to the head of the number 93 driver and see where he can force a move out there through a mistake rather than having to force a move, but through using the tyres. He will be leaning quite heavily into the downforce of the car, but also into the outside tyre compound with the amount of corner speed he can carry. So there's always a bit of a downside to that, albeit right now, with every move he's tried to make here, he's definitely keeping us entertained. Look down the outside there at the hairpin. In fact, gets a really good run off of hairpin. Into his Fangio he goes. Gap 1.5 tenths here, peels to the inside of turn number 9 and making his way up past the apex now, switching back to the inside. It's going to be a repeat potentially of lap 1. No, not quite. He knows not to go for it there, and Springflower immediately gets ready to cover it off. Meanwhile, Garlic Dog and Gabay together. Gabay has had a couple of off tracks recently. Going to see him fall back into the clutches of your number 199, and indeed the Enterprise machine in terms of, I think a reference there to Star Trek if I remember correctly, but the Plain Race Cars car looking absolutely brilliant with that livery, no doubt about it. But speaking of brilliance here, well, if he's any closer at this point, I think LMP2 would have to go for a move, otherwise he'd be inside the rear of the number 93 machine. 1/10 that was coming through Bishop Bend. He has got so much pace in these corners, goes very wide there at turn 16. Oh, well, that's a bit risky going that wide. And the reason for that is, well, as you see, the consequence of him doing that. Understandably, when you're going through turn 15 into a 16, you're going from a right to a left quite aggressively, but then as you come through the left-hander, you're trying to pull the car all the way as far as possible to left to open up the right-hander of Le Mans, but the transition time for the car to go from a left-hander to a right-hander is no more than about 3/4 of a second. Now, why is that so important? Why are we giving you that information? Well, the fact of the matter is, these cars, mid-engine rear-wheel drive, the engine behind the driver, and the engine makes up, or at least the engine bay, makes up the majority of the weight of the car. So, when you are moving all that weight from what is one side of the road to the other so quickly, and remember that is approximately out of 930 kilograms of the car, you are moving at least about 600 kilograms of the car in that simple maneuver. Well, suddenly all that weight is being thrown around, it is being sloshed around at the back of the car, and therefore it means that trying to get the car to calm down going into Le Mans corner becomes even harder. So you want as much whip to the entry into Le Mans bend at turn number 16, but the wider you go, you've got to be more aggressive with that weight transfer, and the more aggressive the weight transfer, the less front end grip not less front end grip, the less rear end grip you're going to have, and the more you rely on your front end grip, and that's why you suddenly see these cars either swing round or they get a lot of understeer into that corner. So that's the thing they've got to be careful of. And a little bit of trivia for you: if you do go further southeast from Le Mans Bend, which is the southeastmost part of the circuit, what you'll find is you actually make your way into Sebring Regional Airport. Indeed, this circuit is located on the site of a still active airport, albeit the actual tarmac they race on here and the concrete sections are not used for taking off planes anymore, although they could theoretically be recommissioned to do so. But indeed, if you just go the best part of about 800 metres southeast of this circuit, you will be heading to the taxiways of a regional airport in the US of A. And well, the trivia used to be in the early days of endurance racing here, well, when they didn't have that much light in, we saw drivers get lost. But more on that later, because right now we can't get lost in that whilst watching this battle, as LMP2 finally gets a good run out of the body. He'll be on the inside down the Auburn Straight, and we'll speak foul right now. Definitely not having many chess pieces on the board here in terms of where he can go, albeit LMP2 gets ahead now. Will Springflower try to get a better run off of the corner. Can he counter attack here as they head on towards next lap, going on to lap number 13? The answer is no. LMP2 gets ahead, and look at that gap that's already opened up. That's half a second there. I think Springflower right now deciding, you know what, it's better not to react. He almost brushes the inside wall there going in towards turn number 1. And well, the number 93 driver here falling back a little bit, but playing up a stoic defence initially, and I think deciding that perhaps it's better to focus on strategy. So LMP2 finally completes his recovery to 7th place and falling to the back of the field, and well, Springflower in 8th now, but Nicolator is ahead by 2 seconds. DC and Pancakes are falling back 3 seconds behind. Still, there might be plenty more in this story of the battle to go, albeit I do believe that Pancakes has had a little bit of run wide. Going out of turn number 5, just losing a bit more time as he chases after DC, although a minor off as we understand it, and Urko catching up here. So the Bog Life machines are definitely right now getting closer and closer to each other, and Pancakes for SimCity Racing may find himself squeezed between the two Bog machines later on in this stint. But back to the front of the field, Knotavin right now still leading quite comfortably in your number 28. Gap 6.6 seconds, still pumping out the fastest laps. His last lap was a 53.9. Squilliam is trying to respond, has set a previous best of a 54.21, so therefore now only 3/10 behind in terms of average lap pace, it would seem, if it continues on that trajectory. But at least at the moment, Knotavin has an answer to everybody's questions here, and well, as he is asked even more of himself as he comes towards the end of this lap. Strategy-wise, understandably, I think he'll be going for the overcut strategy. He'll just go as long as humanly possible and let everybody else pit first. Albeit, how much fuel is he using to be able to deliver these laps? So that's another 53.9 dead on the dot. Meanwhile, Squilliam heads towards the line as he does so at 53.956. So his pace now is started to turn up. Has Squilliam been holding back for the first 25 minutes of the race? It's theoretically possible. Alternatively, he's discovered some pace out there that he didn't think he had. Perhaps the confidence has grown now. This circuit is practically bone dry. There are some very minor puddles in places you wouldn't normally drive, and it does seem as though the curbs are starting to get clearer and clearer of standing water as well. So suddenly, Squilliam might be feeling as though he can come alive a bit, as into the pit for the first strategic stop of the day is Urko, coming in from 11th place. So he was closed up to Pancakes, but I think Bon Knife has said, you know what, let's split the strategies, let's get Urko in nice and early, let's see if we can get him to undercut Pancakes, and DC may try to go a bit longer. So suddenly, DC here's got a bit of pressure on him, but compared to his teammate, because Pancakes is still there, but Pancakes is the driver who's really got the pressure on right now. Because what he's got to do is react to one of the two drivers as he runs a bit wide there coming out of turn number 5. I think thinking about things strategically as he tries to clear the corner. One thought is going to be, does he respond to Urko and pit, and therefore he tries to come out ahead of Urko, who's clearly going for the undercut on him, or does he now stick to the strategy of following DC, which puts him at risk of being undercut by Urko, presuming Urko is the faster driver when he's come out the pit lane and is able to put all the laps together. Now Urko is leaving the pits. Here he goes, the limiter line, as denoted by the green cone, and they can build up the speed. Of course, this pit exit does run outside parallel to the opening corner. There's a lot less grip out there. It's a much tighter exit, and the natural theme is there that you'll be on the outside line coming out to turn 1, and you return to the natural racing line going into turns 2 and 3. Urko does so, will make his way on through. Now we'll have to wait and see how quick is he going to be. A pit stop there of just shy of 28 seconds. And do keep in mind that fuel and tyres are done in parallel when it comes to the pit stops, and that would have been enough time almost to change all 4 tyres. I suspect he would only have changed 2 tyres. If that, it would have been the 2 outside tyres, and that would have been your left-hand side tyres, because this is a clockwise circuit, which means there are more right-handers than left-handers, and you do have a lot of tyre wear there, particularly at Sunset Bend on left-hand tyres, although the right-hand tyres do take a bit of wear, particularly at Gender Being Bend at 1, and also the run through turns 3 and 4 just afterwards, given the fact they're very sharp corners. But meanwhile, speaking of some sharp action, we come to the sharp back end of the field, because this is Pebble and Omega coming together. The 3.8 racing drive definitely had a bit of a difficult start to his race, as Pebble goes straight on there on the braking and will go to the grass. I think missing his braking zone, and again doesn't want to risk the lock-up, and the car just rolls straight on, so Omega will take that place. Well, unfortunately for Pebble there, a bit of a small mistake, but it has big consequences as he does lose out. And Omega in return also makes a mistake of his own there, a bit too much confidence and speed into Tower Bend. 10 out of 10 for the confidence, but 1 out of 10 for the speed, but he'll get that right eventually as he makes his way up towards turn number 15. From him, well, things definitely do go a little bit silent in terms of battling for now, but we are definitely in the strategic phase of this race. And Nicolator right now, 6th place, definitely leading the second half of the top 10. We do have a very clear split in terms of your top 5 drivers versus your 6th through to 10th drivers. And that being on pace, it would seem, although Cat Daddy and Jen, they are still matching each other. 4 pace they make the one around. And double checking the lap times, over the last couple of laps, Jen has started to open up that gap a little bit more. Now 1.5 seconds clear, albeit Cat Daddy, I think, trying to find a response if he can. Well, this gap definitely of intrigue. Meanwhile, Simply Steve 2.2 seconds up the road. And Steve, to be fair, is not fast in the pair of them. He's being matched by both drivers here. Jen seems to have the strongest pace over a single lap deeper into the stint, whereas Cat Daddy is the most consistent, and Simply Steve seems to have all the pace at the start of the stint based on their lap times. But indeed, the last lap, a 54.9 for Simply Steve, a 54.7 for Jen, and a 55.0 for Cat Daddy. What's it going to be this time around? And Steve heads to the timeline, and we'll squilly him up the road, sets a 54.0, Simply Steve a 55.0, Jen meanwhile a 55.1, Cat Daddy a 54.7. So you can see it's really oscillating back and forth. They're all within the same window of each other at the moment. This is definitely going to be a race on consistency here, and who's going to have the quickest pit stop as well. And well, fuel saving can always gain you a couple of seconds in the pit lane if you can find a way to do it. Going back to the theme of tyre changes, of course, only 2 tyres would normally be changed here. You wouldn't change all 4, because otherwise, whilst you will have some very fresh rubber towards the end of the race, the only problem you are going to have the fact is you have to warm all those tyres back up. That normally takes a couple of laps, and it means that these cars become treacherous once again. Now, we did say there was a risk of rain later on today. That rain seems to have now gone away, at least for the time being. The clouds are actually breaking up a little bit, so the forecast in the end, well, of course, wind direction can change, and with that, it can change the way the weather is going to flow, but you have got brilliant sunshine over the circuit for now, so perhaps then we are going to see this circuit be bone dry for the rest of it, and if so, we'll see the very best laps that our drivers can do here on a circuit that will start to really be rubbering up in the final 20 minutes or so, and therefore these lap times are just going to come down. The chase for the fastest lap could be just as critical as the chase for positions. Leave that to Empty Dust on the back of Nicolator. And these two still together. They have dropped Spring Flower to 2.5 seconds. You'll see Spring Flower in the rear of the picture. And indeed, this does seem to be a bit of a burgeoning battle now for the right to be the first driver outside the top 6. Although Nicolator, they're really struggling going through town. But you can see the rear of the car sliding all over the place. And, well, Nicolator not too pleased. Now, we do know there is a bit of a theme with regards to the way Nick Squared normally set up their cars. They do normally set them up, as we have seen in the past, for a lot more straight line speed compared to their rivals. We saw that on Mosport in particular, where through the bends, they were nowhere near as quick as the likes of Epmy Dust, who had a lot more ring on the car, but meanwhile on the straights they were untouchable. They were able to keep that gap nice and open. I think that's what Nicolator's here doing today. I think the team at Nick Squared have set this car up to have so much more straight line speed, but the cost is you get to corners like Sunset Bend, you'll see Epmy Dust here will close up very quickly, only then to lose out on the corner exit, presuming that Nicolator gets a good enough exit. But Knotavin and Cat Daddy in fact, Knotavin in from the lead, splits the race exactly in half. That's not normal. Meanwhile, we do see Epmy Dust here trying to make a move into turn 1, and Nick Squared there under pressure, but as he comes on through the corner, can he get the speed down towards turn number 3? Epmy Dust is still on the inside here. This could be critical before they go for their pit stops. Epmy Dust is there. And Nicolator, I don't think he's going to have a response here. He's going to try and go around the outside. He'll fend it into turn 5. But I think the problem is here, unless Epmy Dust does not take confidence out the corner. And Nicolator there, just a little bit of oversteer and exit. Otherwise, that would have been perfect. He would have had the run all the way down towards turn number 7 by default. But Epmy Dust now could go defensive to the inside here. He puts it in the middle of the road. Nicolator says, right, I'm going to look for it. And then realises he's going to run out of road too soon. And Epmy Dust does get that move done. But Nicolator so close there to defend it successfully around the outside of turns 3 and 5. If he had not had that little moment of oversteer there, I think Epmy Dust would have really been in trouble coming down towards the hairpin, because Nicolator would have had the straight line speed to offset Epmy Dust's corner speed. But that goes to show you can set up the cars with 2 different approaches here, and that's what's making this so close and exciting between these drivers as they come on through and up towards the next braking zone. But right now, Nicolator doing everything he can to stay to the back of Epmy Dust as their battling goes on. But remember, we have started to see some pit stops, and Knotavin, the reason we say it's not normal is normally he goes longer than most, but he's decided to split the race exactly in half. And one thought may be, is given the amount of fuel that these cars can carry, I wonder if the team by design have actually underfueled the car going to the grid. So therefore, the thought process behind that is, it may sound a bit odd, if you took the full fuel tank, you would enable this car to approximately go the best part of 40 to 45 minutes in the opening stint. But understandably, that's extra weight. So what they've done is fueled the car for the first half of the race, and then essentially said, right, it will pit 30 minutes into the race, but you have less weight in the car. It does mean you have a slightly longer pit stop perhaps, but you've only got to put all the fuel back in to do the second half of the race. You don't need to have a heavy car to the very end. It is one way to approach it, and these cars, of course, they are so sensitive to weight. Given how light these prototypes are by default, I think Knotavin there might have been onto the right strategy if we are correct in our presumption. But meanwhile, in the pits is also Pebble in 15th place, and I suspect he'll be making his way out of the pits very shortly. And there he goes, as he makes his way up to speed in number 48 and heads towards the pit limiter line, but he will be going effectively a lap down as our race leader's already cleared him, and in fact we do see there our effective strategic leader Knotavin clearing him as well. Now we have had the pit stop for Cat Daddy, who was at the time of course battling for third place with Jen and none other than the machinery that has pitted, and why does the name escape me, of Simply Steve, as that Simply Steve has not pitted. I correct myself there, so Cat Daddy the only one of the trio to have pitted, as Kubay meanwhile comes into pit lane, so making his way on down. pitting from at the time none other than 11th place. Well, now we'll be seeing where he's going to fill back into the equation. But indeed, the strategy is so important for now, as Epmidas started to gradually gap Nicolator, although I think this gradual gap at the moment is more Nicolator as well. Perhaps just trying to save some fuel here to see if he can get back based on the undercut of the pit stop. However, Nicolator at this point, if he's going to do so, he's going to push a little bit because these corners will come naturally to him. And particularly given the fact he's in the dirty air of another car now, those corners are going to feel even more painful because he's already running a bit less downforce in the car, if our understanding is correct. But now that car's going to feel even worse over the front end. And when you haven't got much downforce in the rear and then you lose some on the front, well, suddenly you've got a car there that doesn't want to stay planted whatsoever. A good exit there coming out of Le Mans. And we're staying within a half a second now. I think there's some fuel saving going on the Nicolator, perhaps running about what is 80% of the full throttle travel, and that just enables him to stay close without gaining or losing any time. But runs a bit deep through Sunset there, but brings it back very nicely on the corner exit. The gap will open by another 10th or so, as meanwhile into the pits from third place comes Jen, and that will enable Epmidas and Nicolator to go ahead. Knotavin will surely come ahead of the teammate of Night Racing, and then we'll have to wait and see where we see Simply Steve fit back into that picture when he stays out, because that's what he's doing right now. And in number 23 drive here for Speed Squad, I think his thought process is with 25 minutes to go as long as you can and just simply stay out of trouble. Now, the risk, of course, if you do pit before your rivals, and particularly before many a driver further down the order of pits, is if you catch up to another driver who has yet to pit, are you going to have to pass them? And again, you presume that perhaps they're a bit of a slower driver, but they don't have to give way to you necessarily because they are on the lead lap with you. You are fighting for position. Now, understandably, a very savvy driver who has yet to pit will look at their rearview mirrors, see that you're coming, and then let you go, because they'll realise, well, there's no point fighting with that driver unless it's part of the team's championship battle, and therefore team's points are on the line, or at least trying to stall the other car before it can get onto its rivals who have also pitted. But otherwise, it's not really worth it because you're compromising your own race for no real benefit other than the right to fight a lead driver, if you will. So that's one of the thought processes there, that the fact you'd assume, particularly when you've got such a respectful community, such that seen at the Just2Idiots Championship Series, that everyone will know who's really battling whom, and therefore those who are a pit stop down may be deciding not to fight those who've already got the pit stop done. That's where all the big intrigue comes. And also, of course, you do catch up to a pair of drivers who are getting ready to battle, which we do have DC and Pancakes here, both yet to pit. And Knotavin is only 3.5 seconds behind. You see him in the rear of the picture briefly, is that blue speck. Well, the thing is that these two are fighting and Knotavin gets onto the back of them and they don't realise that he's there. Well, suddenly, could we see Knotavin being held up? Rightfully so, just for the simple reason that he's got two battling in front of him. He's got to find his way into that battle. Well, we'll see as Simply Steve makes his way in, Squilliam stays out. So Squilliam demonstrates the fact the fuel tank can go more than at 36.5 minutes. Simply Steve, meanwhile, decides to get his pit stop out of the way, so he'll be reacting to Jen's pit stop. Well, Epmidas staying on out a little bit longer, so does Nicolator. And, well, where is Cat Daddy? Cat Daddy's come out behind Jen, as meanwhile DC and Pancakes both come in. So suddenly, Knotavin will be getting ahead of the pair of them, and that's perfect timing there for the number 28 driver, who's looking to try and make it his 8th win in a row for this season. Indeed, by pitting early and catching up to DC and Pancakes at the right time, he's not been held up by them at all, because they have come in just at the end of the stint, as he was about to get onto the back of them. Simply Steve leaves the pit lane. Now, where is Jen? Where's Cat Daddy? There is Jen, making her way out of the final corner. And coming down towards turn 1, I think Simply Steve here has got ahead. Yes, he has. So Simply Steve has got back ahead of Jen. So it means that Jen now and Cat Daddy, that's going to be the order there of the trio for the battle for third place as we understand it. And, well, that gap has grown considerably. In fact, that gap has now been promoted to the best part there of almost 6 seconds. And Cat Daddy, by comparison, now 3 seconds behind. Did take a bit more fuel in the pit stop by comparison. So I think Jen's been doing a lot of fuel saving. Simply Steve had a slightly longer pit stop compared to Jen, but I think it is on the outlap that Jen's not had the best outlap by comparison. Now I have to wait and see if Simply Steve has a similar outlap or not. That's been a bit of a chop and change there. And we still do have a few more pit stops to come, as we do show you the number of stops made in the time tower. It's your top 4 in particular who have yet to pit. And Squilliam right now carries on as he practically brushes the exit wall there. Well, he's been absolutely brash right now. He's trying to pump in his best possible laps, although Knotavin, last lap, a 53.22, an absolute monster lap. Squilliam sets the personal best almost, a 53.83. His personal best so far has been a 53.7, but even so, Knotavin at this point putting in qualifying laps here to make sure that Squilliam has no means of winning this race, even on the overcut strategy. But whilst all this has happened, we have had an off-track for Pancakes that has enabled DC to get back ahead of him. There's the proof of the pudding, as you see them making the way out. and down towards turn number 10, and we'll very shortly we'll get you on board with them. And indeed, we'll take a look back in time with regards to the battle and how that changed. But meanwhile, Springflower into the pit lane from 4th place, and that's going to relegate him back outside the top 5, as we will see Knotavin coming through. There he goes, and well, Simply Steve will be 32 seconds behind. So it will be a long pit stop, but we're wondering where exactly we are going to be seeing Springflower brought into all of this, and indeed with it, will it be ahead of DC and Pancakes? One would have to presume, perhaps so. And well, here we go then, because Jen comes out the final corner, and as she does so, chased after Simply Steve. The gap is 3.3 seconds, so Simply Steve's outlap actually just a little bit quicker than Jen's in the end, so that gap has been brought down. Springflower now heading towards the limiter line. There goes Cat Daddy. Then we're waiting for DC. Where is DC? Well, DC's a long way back, so Springflower now knows he's clear of DC. He knows it's clear of Urka and Pancakes, and the thought process is now he's got to see if he's going to be clear of this man, Etmidust, and also Nicolator, who's just behind. Now, Nicolator has been dropped to 2.7 seconds off of the back of Etmidust, so I think it's now showing the fact that Etmidust here is getting his pace together. And now that he hasn't got to worry about a car that is faster on the straights in front of him, but weaker in the corners, he can just start to pump those laps together. And it is being represented in the fact the last lap in particular, he was 1.2 seconds faster. Although I suspect there was a small mistake for Nicolator on that one. That doesn't ring sense otherwise, because I think Nicolator's pace has been a lot closer than that over the last few laps. And indeed, as I double check all the statistics, Nicolator having a small error on the previous lap, and that has been the difference. But Emma just heads on down here and in towards turn number 17. As he does so, will we see a sunset to his first stint at this race? Will he carry on even more so? Squilliam has gone on to another lap, but indeed, with Squilliam being the best part of 27 seconds ahead, and well, Etmidust decides to come in, so he makes his way in. Nicolator does the same, so I wonder if Squilliam will be coming in at the end of lap 22, as Knotavin carries on. But before he does, there goes Yomega, who is a lap down leaders at the moment, but not a lap down on Knotavin, the strategic leader. He's running 14th place for 3.8 racing, but Knotavin is chasing after him to put a lap on him where he can. Meanwhile, Pancakes and Urko, they're back together once again. These two enjoying the scrap, as they have done so many times. And DC just up the road, but Long Life Motorsport trying to keep the SimCity racing car behind. We do see a little bit of standing water still there on the run in towards Bishop Bend. But now to the thought process there. Simply Steve making his way on out, as Epidust and Nicolator still being serviced. Jen will be coming through shortly. There she comes, with Cat Daddy closing quite rapidly, to be fair, so he's trying to get on the move. Meanwhile, Springflower comes out of sunset, goes very sideways into the wall. He loses it there coming into the corner. That could have been so critical as the rear suspension collapses. And for Springflower, can he get it into the pit lane? Well, he's in such a risky spot to do so. I think, unfortunately, that's going to be a tow to the pits. That car's not going anywhere fast. But suddenly it does mean that, well, Simply Steve will hold third ahead of Jen and Cat Daddy at the moment, but Etmidust in the end will come back out ahead of Nicolator, and their battle swings even more in the favour of Etmidust now. 4 seconds clear, and I think at this point, well, Nicolator here is going to have no risk of having to battle with Springflower, who does have to tow to the pit lane after that happened. But goodness me, what a moment there, a completely unexpected moment, and we'll get a replay of that. The onboard from Springflower, who went sideways into the wall at sunset. Squilliam heads into the pit lane meanwhile, and behind him, Gabay there, so both coming in, and will be both be serving their pit stop for the day as well. I do believe, in fact, Gabay's into the pit lane for a second time. I wonder if that's potentially a drive-through penalty for track limits and instant points. We'll have to see, but Squilliam definitely coming in to be serviced. Here's Knotavin making his way on down Newman Straight at the moment, as we do hide now the number of pit stops being made, given the fact that we are seeing now the final pit stop on the strategy being served. Gabay, in fact, into pit lane and out of this race. I wonder if there was a technical issue with the car for the number 22 driver, and well, Squilliam is leaving his pit stall. As he does so, then heads to the limiter line, and well, where's Knotavin in all this? Here comes Knotavin making his way on down. It's going to be close between these two, in fact, a lot closer than we expected, and Squilliam is out in front. I don't believe it. Squilliam were a much shorter pit stop, 4 seconds shorter, and Knotavin right now is going to make a move. He's going to go in immediately there in towards turn number 3. And we thought this race may have been done and dusted, but not so. Squilliam has been fuel saving like mad for the last stint. So therefore it does mean now we'll have a battle of the road all the way to the very end. 17 minutes to go. And we're trying to keep Knotavin behind at this point. I think that's going to be much harder than it sounds. And well, Squilliam goes defensive initially. But remember, he's got to try and warm those tyres back up. He may have changed the tyre or two as well. We'll have an 18-second pit stop there. It would only be 2 tyres being changed at most. And Knotavin at the moment, he's got his tyres fully up to temperature. But if Squilliam can hold him off for at least 2 laps, then suddenly they will have some tyre temperature parity. And remember, the Vision Motorsports driver will have the fresher tyres theoretically going into this final stint, given the fact that whatever he's changed will be brand new, and he'll only have to do about 17 minutes of racing plus the final lap, and also the tyres that he has not changed will now be going back through a reheating cycle, and he seems to have been protecting the car quite significantly over that first stint. This will be a shock to everybody, but right now Knotavin here, well, given the pace he has got, we know based on fastest laps he is looking to be at least around 4 to 5 tenths faster over a single lap. Well, the theory surely got to be that Knotavin here just needs to pull the trigger once and he should be able to get this done, but Squilliam will do anything he can to make sure that's not possible for the night racing car, and Vision Motorsports right now hoping that perhaps they can today break the win streak of the night racing at number 28. As number 6 makes his way down the Ulman straight here, you can see Knotavin just letting himself fall back a little bit, staying well within the wheel tracks of Squilliam, and this is going to be about patience. As much as you'd like to poke and probe initially, if he's patient, well, he'll get the upper hand gradually. That'll be the thought process here as they come towards the end of another turn of the circuit. Roaring the way past our static camera there, so quick for it, couldn't catch up with them. And on to now lap 24. And the gap between these two and Simply Steve in third is 23 seconds. So there's no doubt these two right now fighting for first and second. They're not at risk of losing out, but immediately Knotavin looking for a move there into three, putting the pressure onto Squilliam. Squilliam ran a little bit deep there out of three. However, it's only really one wide through these corners, and if Knotavin can't find a way in. And we're speaking of battles build up, we do have a Jen and Cat Daddy close together. Cat Daddy on the charge, trying to take that full place back with 7 seconds to Simply Steve at this point. So therefore, we're going to see them going to Jen to B and Ben. Will Cat Daddy look for a move? The answer is yes, he's going to go all in here, and Jen sees it coming, leaves the door open, and well, Cat Daddy will not be able to complete that move there, not able to carry the momentum, and Jen played that perfectly that time around, and let me dust right now, 4 seconds behind with Spring Flat out the pit lane between them, a lap down after his altercation with the barrier at Sunset Bend, just before he was going to get into the fight potentially for 6th place Let Me Dust and Nicolator, so that's got a bit wrong. Meanwhile, DC, Urko and Pancakes are the Bong Life cars here, 8th and 9th, Pancakes meanwhile for SimCity Racing, completes that top 10, but he wants those 2 places back. But as they come through, the battles have definitely all now built up once again. It's always the way. As soon as the pit stops are done, we always suddenly see battles emerge here in the Just2Idiots Championship Series. And Squilliam right now, again, under such huge pressure from Knotavin. Knotavin not looking for the move in towards turn 15. Just seeing if he can. In fact, he's going to try and go around the outside. That's unconventional, but it's going to be bold. It's going to be brazen. It's going to be daring. And in the end, well, Squilliam has to go defensive. I don't think anybody expected that. And that's thrown him off slight line as they come down the Auburn straight. But jumping on board the dashboard here, Knotavin, well, not quite close enough to make a move, but that really shows you the confidence that Knotavin has to try and go around the outside of turn 15. You don't normally see that, but now he's going to look to the inside here towards Sunset Bend. And Squilliam almost goes a little bit too deep there to be able to defend the position, but in the end, not quite so. Meanwhile, as it's going to be a little brush with the barrier there for both drivers, we see Pancakes under pressure here to try and pass DC. He gets up the inside through Cunningham, but does he complete it? Collier, he does, around the outside. Lovely move from Pancakes. There's a bit more context to that battle. We will come back to it because they have been side by side since the hairpin, but a bit of a run wide there from DC. That may just stop that battle for a brief moment, but back to lead as we come here. Whilst we would love to take a trip back in time, ladies and gentlemen, not when the battling's this close right now. Squilliam and Knotavin absolutely glued nose to tail and enjoying the fight. Also, Jen and Cat Daddy, still 2 tenths between them. And will we see an opportunity for Cat Daddy this time around? Jen slightly away for the optimal racing line there, but then returns to it. Cat Daddy launches up the inside again. He keeps looking for it, but the problem is, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. And well, right now, Jen definitely living up to that adage, not being fooled for it as they come up towards turn number 3. Pancakes and Urko then together. DC has fallen back a little bit. Had an off track at Le Mans corner we're hearing in our ears. So therefore the battle for 8th place now is a 2-way fight rather than a 3-way fight. And Pancakes here is going to try and go for the run down towards turn 1 as we ride aboard looking down over the front of the 481. And well, will he go for it in towards Jen to be in? The answer is no. Instead he's going to try and open up the corner even more, carry a bit more speed. But Urko does the same there. And Pancakes right now not really having a response here as they come in towards turn number 3. Although I think at this moment he's trying to see if he can goad Urko into an error. Urko's not going to let that one go down. I can tell you that. He will do everything in his power to hold on with a little bit of sideways drift there coming through turn number 5. Tyres are now starting to feel a little bit old on these cars. The ones that haven't been changed at least. Meanwhile, back to leaders. Down Auburn they come. And this time Knotavin 2 tenths back, but inching closer and closer every time. He gets so close. He thinks about an opportunity, but the problem is Squilliam's just able to outrun him a little bit on these straights. But you can see what Knotavin waiting for. He's waiting for that door on the inside at Sunset to open up just wide enough for him to lunge into the space. And I think it's his trail braking that really is the difference there on those corners. We're just able to be a little bit more bold on the brakes as they head down the start-finish straight. And coming on board with the Canadian driver. heading on through at the left-hander, so close to barrier there. Again, the confidence of Knotavin. He really does know this circuit like the back of his hand. He's showing it right now where he's positioned the car. He's literally everywhere and nowhere at the same time here. That's the hard part when you're the race leader as Squilliam, is the fact you're going to be looking in your mirrors, and every time you look to see where Knotavin is, he's not necessarily on the line you'd expect him to be, or he's closer to the walls compared to what you're doing, and that really puts so much mental pressure on you. You suddenly think to yourself, what do I need to do to go quicker? I've got to do what Knotavin doing, and that's when the mistakes happen. And Knotavin looking around the outside, Squilliam going defensive here into the hairpin, but of course Knotavin will cut it back there. And again, on the exit, the car so confident within 1.5 attempts as they make the way through Fangio here. Well, this isn't playing with your food, but it's close to it as Knotavin looking for a movement. Squilliam goes defensive, and now Knotavin will think about the outside. What do you think about the switchback? It's the latter, but Squilliam knows it's coming. He reads his faults of his rival, and now they're having to play the game of high-speed chess as they're both trying to outthink each other to match as outdrive each other. And in towards Tower Bend there, getting very close to Knotavin, but has to back off. They're getting a bit too close for comfort. And to lift off the brakes as he made his way through the corner. If he tried to carry the speed he normally would, I think there would have been a bit of a contact between the two of them, and that would have perhaps seen both drivers head to the steward's room afterwards. That's the last thing we want to see in the battle for the win, is it be he's settled in the steward's room. But still, more time to come. And as these drivers make their way out to Le Mans, well, right now it definitely feels like this is a test of endurance here for Squilliam. He's held on for 7 minutes so far. He's got another 10 minutes, and that equates approximately into this lap plus another 6 to go. It is not going to be easy here for Squilliam in the number 6, and it only takes one error to break down the resolute walls that he's put up. And Knotavin right now immediately back with him there, and again it's the trail breaking through the medium to high speed corners. That is where Knotavin is the stronger of the two drivers. The rest of the lap, they're very close, but Squilliam just does not have the ability to carry as much speed to the apex of the hardest corners of the circuit, and that is being the difference there. But on to lap 27 here, and Squilliam puts the car in the middle of the road, and Knotavin starts to sneak to the inside. And again, this is all about trying to get Squilliam to react. It's trying to get him offline, trying to get him to focus more on the car behind rather than his braking points. His racing line as he understeers and then oversteers a little bit out of 5. And as the car wobbles around, well, Knotavin right now so close at this point. If he was any closer, he'd be touching the rear wing of his rival. And down towards that braking zone they go. And, well, Squilliam now, he can see the number 28 here. It's like a shark to blood in the water at this point. He's buried his fangs. He's looking to try and chop this lead off of him. And, well, so close to the mud. I think at the moment they are practically touching at this point. Although you can definitely tell they're not quite touching here as they make their way onwards, but looking all the way through, and so quick for our curb carrier there that it doesn't get shown, and coming in towards turn number 10, looking at the outside. Can Knotavin get this done? He'll get the inside of Collier. It may be enough. I think it could be enough here. Now Squilliam's got to try to hold the inside, but he understeers and it shakes wide. Coming down to turn number 11 towards 12, but he's still there. He's back on the inside. He's going to go for it. Squilliam knows he can't let it go. The car's wobbling underneath him, but right now Squilliam's trying to tame the rabid beast that he's driving, but it's not enough, and Knotavin does get ahead. So Squilliam now's got to go all in for it. He's going to look around the outside of turn number 15. He tries, but Knotavin on the inside line here just simply has to put up the walls and says no. And now can Squilliam get a better run out of Le Mans? Can he somehow find a way to keep this battle alive into a sunset bend? And if he does, he's going to have to go for the mother of all sins, but I don't think so. And coming out to the right-hander, it's going to be a gap now of half a second here, and while Squilliam will gain in the toe, I think Knotavin has got this one done. I think that unless he makes a mistake, and don't rule it out, he has been known to make mistakes, although they're very rare. When they do happen, they're spectacular. See Magny-Cours, lap number 1 last time out for reference, and right now Knotavin, I think, has controlled it. 6 steps into the gap as they head towards the line. Lap number 28 gets underway, and after a grand total of 10 minutes, Knotavin has found his way ahead of Squilliam, but he's had to work so hard to do it, and doing it in such an unconventional way to go outside to inside through Cunningham into Collier, and in the end Squilliam came back into Tower, did everything he could, but just not having the traction coming out of Tower Bend, and that was the difference. He was able to throw the car at Knotavin, but in the car underneath it just did not have the rear end grip that he needed to be able to maintain the two wides through such narrow exit lines. And with Squilliam running wide there at turn number 5, I think that's really now sealed the deal. But it's not over yet in terms of battles, because Cat Daddy still chased after Gem, but Dust is there, and Dust right now is catching gradually. After we did see Cat Daddy all over the back of Gem for several laps, well suddenly now Dust is there and looking ready to pounce. And I wonder if Cat Daddy's potentially burnt out the tyres on this car. I wonder if he's just pushed too hard. Runs very wide there coming out of turn number 5 to correct the car. Empty Dust here looking around the outside for a big bend. Now we know that Empty Dust does have maximum rear wing on that car by looks of things compared to his rivals. So therefore he is going to have to try and do it all in the corners. Onto the brakes they go. Cat Daddy there's not going to give up at all. Locks up the front right brake and Empty Dust goes to the switch back there. But the timing's not right. Squeezes the inside. Takes a bit of a rally cross approach there. He was 2 wheels on the curve. I think that's legal. Although we have to check the rule. But with regards to that one. And Empty Dust in the end still there on the inside, but run out of road slightly. Looks up the inside, dives on the brakes. He's going to go in. There's contact between the two of them. Cat Daddy didn't want to let it go. And Empty Dust in the end said, you know what, hey ho, let's go. But Cat Daddy, I don't think will be too pleased about that. And indeed, it's going to be a bit of a bop between the two of them. And Cat Daddy goes around, but he drops by Nicolator. And Sonny was looking to be quite a cool end to the race on the playing race cars driver. Sonny ends up becoming a very fiery one, down to 7th place. Can he find a way to recover perhaps 6th place back of Nicolator? We'll have to see, but I wouldn't be surprised if that moment goes to the stewards after the race. And I think both drivers will have their own version of events. And well, ladies and gentlemen, with that gives us the perfect interlude perhaps to bring you up to speed with some big moments from earlier on in this race. Indeed, we've had quite a few replays bubbling, but we haven't been able to bring them to you as a result of all the fighting, but we can now go back in time and take a look, particularly starting all the way back with things going a bit wrong for Spring Flower when it did go into sunset. And this was all the way back on lap number 21. Spring Flower at the time, of course, trying to chase down his rivals in the States for the pit stops. But as he made his way into sunset, the rear of the car let go. And at those speeds, about 90 miles an hour, it will have gone into the barrier there. And the car completely disintegrating and his race in pieces. We then had this battle, of course, for 9th place between Pancakes and DC. And, well, how it all started was Urko passing DC up the inside there. So the Bong Life Motorsport cars went for the switch of position, but it opened the door for Pancakes to get to the inside. And, well, I don't think that was intended for the Bong Life Motorsport cars. And I wonder if perhaps we're going to see a bit of frustration there for DC after the race because he really did lose out. And the two of them fought their way all the way through Cunningham in towards Collier. And in the end, Pancakes had to go around the outside. Brilliant bit of confidence there from Pancakes. Sees the opportunity. And understandably, I think DC may have just been a little bit wounded by that one, but we also did, of course, have this brilliant moment, the battle for the lead and potentially the win. Knotavin versus Squilliam on lap 27. And it all began with the run in towards Cunningham Bend, and Knotavin decided to go around the outside. Squilliam gave him the space, to be fair, but you can see, look at the rear of the cars, and you can see how straight Knotavin's was compared to Squilliam, and Squilliam just struggling for rear-end grip, but kept it on the inside there. Coming back into Tower Bend, I did not see that coming, to be fair, that Squilliam would get back on the inside, but that shows you the commitment, and it took all the way to the start of Le Mans to be able to take the place off of Squilliam completely for Knotavin, because Squilliam came back at him on the outside here, but again, you'll see it. A little bit of rub perhaps between the two of them, but that's fair. That was a racing instant, that touch. And in the end, Squilliam just not able to go too wide all the way through turn 16. And that's where the battle finally ended. But with that, we also had this battle for Empty Dust versus Cat Daddy. And this was the two of them after a poor run coming out to turn number 5 for Cat Daddy, and Empty Dust looking around the outside. And when all began here, coming down in towards a braking zone. As they went on to the anchors, Cat Daddy locking up on the front right brake, and that just caused them to go a little bit deep. And Empty Dust had a secondary opportunity, but ran out of road there. And I think he feels as though he was forced off the road a little bit. Now that, of course, will be a bit of a contentious statement, albeit both drivers will have their arguments. We're not going to weigh either way. But Cat Daddy went defensive in the middle of the road. Empty Dust tried to go up the inside. I think he would argue he was crowded on the inside, and Cat Daddy would say, well, there wasn't the space given the way he'd lined up the corner. But definitely a bit of a question on that one between the two of them, and I suspect they'll both have a lot of thoughts about it after the race. With that, we go back to your live racing, ladies and gentlemen. And as we do come back, well, we've not got long left to go. 3 minutes left on the clock here. And right now, our leader, Knotavin, has already opened up that gap to 5 seconds. Now, to be fair, we were looking at replays for the best part of 3 minutes. That does include 1.5 laps. But I think at this point for Squilliam, perhaps the fight has gone out of the driver and the car. And perhaps he's just decided right now the thought process is just simply get it to the end, which definitely makes sense, given the fact I think the game was to try and beat Knotavin. He did beat him on strategy, to be fair. But Knotavin pace here today just too strong for the Vision Motorsport driver to keep behind over the distance, but he did well for 10 minutes, and the pressure he was under, I mean, that would break most drivers after a single lap, let alone 5 laps of Sebring. And Squilliam did not break in the end. He gave it everything, and Knotavin just found a way through. And that has been the story over the course of the season. Whatever anyone's been able to do when Knotavin has been behind them, Knotavin's always had an answer, whether it's on strategy or outright pace or racecraft. But with everyone now just a little bit apart, we do see Magny-Cours there in 5th place, ahead of Nicolator and Cat Daddy still chasing. And well, just behind is Springflower there in 13th place. The car all repaired, of course, that fast repair, but it did have to tow to the pit, which then confounded and compounded his woes. But coming down that start-finish straight, Springflower 9, there's only a couple more laps to go here. As our leaders right now, I believe, onto the penultimate lap. We will get 32 laps in today, but for Springflower, there will be only 31 being done. As we also do have Pebble still out there, currently 3 laps down, but good on him for staying in the race. We have lost Gabay and AJ along the way, unfortunately, although they haven't retired that many laps down. We haven't had that many laps. That's the glitch on our time tell with the replays that we have been taking. And of course, a big shout out to Arturo Mayorga for his brilliant software that enables us to bring you replays of race moments within an iRacing replay, which is how we bring you these post-round broadcasts. And a big thank you to the J2ICS Championship Administration for providing us the replay as well. Well, it definitely has been one of those races that's been remarkable indeed. You could have a replay of this any day, I think. It'll be one of those races that will keep you guessing all the way to the very end. But Jen right now, well, not quite in the hunt of a podium versus Simply Steve. Was in the hunt for it early on, but the pace simply has gone to Steve over the course of the day. And Magny-Cours still trying to close, and closing quite rapidly. In fact, that last lap, 8 tenths fast almost. We could have a battle for 4th place on the last lap, although it would be at the last couple of quarters if Magny-Cours was able to get there in time. So we will keep an eyebrow raised over that one. Meanwhile, we look to Knotavin then. 1 more lap to go. Lap number 31 is ticked off the list. Lap number 32, the white flag waves. And right now, there's Knotavin at the front of your picture. There's Squilliam at the rear of your picture. And 6 seconds is the gap here. And Knotavin right now just needs to keep it cool. Pebble, meanwhile, sees a flash of the headlights there, as we'll see Squilliam go up the inside of the lap down driver to go what effectively be now 4 laps down, I do believe, but still keeping his head up high. And well, Simply Steve further back here in 3rd place at the moment as the clock strikes 0. We now know that this race is definitely seeing its finish. Well, Jen just a little bit further back. We also do see that Omega carrying on. And lap down in 12th place at the moment, comfortably clear of Springflower, who you can see in the rear of the picture. That's 6 seconds the gap between them. So I don't think, unless Omega has a mistake, he's going to be at risk of losing that 12th place. There's some solid points there for the 3.8 racing team. And he's still got to get the job done to the very end. But what about the battle for 4th place? Well, there's Jen. There's Magny-Cours behind. Gap is now 1.6 seconds. So it does seem as though the gap is gradually coming down, but Jen is responding a little bit to it. So I think Jen may be safe. So long as she doesn't make any mistakes in this lap, I think that 4th place is definitely going to be hers. Meanwhile, Pancake still chasing after Urko. Urko has opened up that gap, with Pancake's having a couple of minor errors that have cost him some time. So Urko seems to be safe for 8th. Pancakes will be on course for 9th. And DC at the moment, where he is, he's a long way back. He has had a bit of a moment with some grass and gravel and almost gets it on that sunset there. Goes very deep, and he would have been bringing an early sunset to his race. Not the way he would have wanted it to go. But definitely, despite the fact the rain didn't come back in the end, we have definitely seen an absolute epic of a race here at Sebring. And well, as DC comes across that line to go onto his final lap in 10th place. Well, meanwhile, your 11th place runner of Garlic Dog will also see all the laps today. He will be your last lead lap finisher as he comes around to go onto his 32nd tour of the circuit. But just behind him, well, here's the man today who in the end proved absolutely ruthless in qualifying, in taking pole position by a staggering margin. And whilst he may have not have won on strategy, he's won on pace at racecraft, because Knotavin makes it 8 wins out of 8 rounds in the championship by 7 seconds tonight, racing over Vision Motorsports Squilliam in the end, who returns to the runner-up spot after a long hiatus on the podium. What a drive from him. And in the end, it was nothing else he could do. He could beat Knotavin on strategy, but he couldn't beat him on the road in their relentless battle of the second stint. For Simply Steve, well, what a day this has been for him. He's going to come on home in the end for Speed Squad, bringing on home what will be another podium, 3rd on the podium this time out. And indeed, after his 2nd place last time, well, 3rd place today, some more points coming his way. In 4th, it is going to be Jen for Night Racing. Night Racing make it 1st and 4th. That will resuscitate their championship charge in the team championship ahead of Magny-Cours, who finishes 5th on the road. And then Nicolator will be 6th behind there. And the Nick Square driver in the end could not quite touch the top 5, but put together a solid race as he always does. Cat Daddy takes 7th, although frustrated, I think, with that 7th place, given the late contact between himself and Magny-Cours. But the playing race cars driver will have to see what happens in the stewards room afterwards, should it get reported. And then Urko will come through in 8th place the end for Bong Life Motorsport, having fended off the charge of Pancakes. And well, in the end, both drivers there throwing everything at it, but the Bong Life car just able to hold on. Head of Pancakes for Sim City Racing, who took home 9th. Meanwhile, we do have a bit of of 20 seconds of a gap before we do get to DC. But here he is, he makes his way around. We should give a shout out as well to Omega and also Pebble and Springflower, who have already completed their races, a lap or more down. And meanwhile, here comes the man who finished on the lead lap. It's going to be DC, and he will see the final spot inside the top 10 come to him naturally. And then it will be a Garlic Dog in the end, who'll be your last lead lap finisher, coming on home in 11th place here. Best of the rest in a very challenging race for playing race cars today, and the team championship charge for the lead will definitely have stumbled as a result of the results today, but still taking length there, getting some points, and also improving his credentials in the Drivers' Championship. But that is our race complete, ladies and gentlemen, and when Knotavin doing some celebrations there, and Simply Steve calling it on down, well, we need to call it on down here in the commentary booth and on the broadcast by bringing you down to your race results, subject to any Stewards' inquiries, and here they are. And as we can see in the end, an absolute epic day for 60 minutes of racing in the Blunt Mattress Sockless Sleep Fest Grand Prix for the Sebring International Raceway in round number 8 of Season 12 of the LMP2 season for the Just 2 Idiots Championship Series on iRacing. And over 60 minutes, Knotavin in the end, the fastest driver on a single lap in qualifying, the fastest driver with regards to the fastest lap, and nobody could match him in the end, I do believe. We're just going to double check that information to make certain of it, ladies and gentlemen, but I do believe taking the fastest lap from the race in here today as well, and that would be correct, a 53.221 set on lap number 19. Nobody coming within 4 tenths of that. And the nearest driver to it being none other than Squilliam. And in the end, what a performance from Knotavin. And he had to beat Squilliam on the road in the end, with Squilliam having the strategic advantage, undercutting him in terms of pit stop length by 4 seconds. And that was how it all came down to a battle in the final 17 minutes. And in the end, with 7 minutes to go, Knotavin had got the job done. Squilliam, second place there. But to be fair, putting up an absolutely resolute defence. You cannot fault the man for his defensive driving. But in the end, just did not have the rear tyre life left to be able to hold on. And the Vision Motorsports driver having to cede to be the runner-up. Speed Squad, Simply Steve, third place there. And then a further, what was grand total, 19 seconds behind. But to be fair, enjoyed his own unique battle for third with Jen and also Empty Dust and Nicolator. And then coming out on top there for Speed Squad ahead of Night Race's Jen, who was 10 seconds behind. For Jen, it was all about fending off Empty Dust in the closing stages, but early on it's making sure that the likes of Cat Daddy could not come on through, and then Jen doing a fantastic job of that to take 4th place, missing out on the podium, but one day it'll come, and Empty Dust there completing the top 5 for Speed Squad, a further 1.8 seconds behind. It was then a further 3.2 seconds to Nicolator for Nick Squared, who despite his opening stint pace, the pace gradually went away as the race went on, unfortunately for him, so he had to settle for 6th, however ahead of Cat Daddy, who after his late contact with Empty Dust, will be fuming at that 7th place, given it was looking to be screwed on for a potential top 5, but that's the way it's gone for the playing race cars driver. Urko taking 8th there for Bong Life Motorsport, making sure that Pancakes could not click close enough to steal it away from him after he took the place off of DC originally, but DC being ambushed there by Pancakes and the SimCity Racing driver being able to thread the needle and put himself as the filler in the Bong Life Motorsport sandwich in 9th. DC then having to settle for 10th place, a further, what was 21 seconds behind, and it was a further 15 seconds to Garlic Dog, best the rest 11th, and completing your lead lap finishing order. Behind the playing race cars driver was the 3.8 racing machine of Omega, who was a lap down as classified, and it was a lap down as classified to Springflower, the debutant from France, who sadly ended up in the water sunset bend when he was on course potentially to challenge for 6th or 7th place. But it didn't quite work out, pushing too hard at the final quarter, and we did see 3 laps down to Pebble, who with a few lockups fell down the order, but to be fair, stayed in it to win it, and that's what we love to see with 14th for the Privateer. We did unfortunately lose Gabay along the way, and unfortunately the Funk Hub Racing Drive Privateer retiring with 11 laps to go, and we also saw technical issues blighted the car of AJ, and therefore whilst it did get going, it went from the pit lane, it went multiple laps down, and in the end it retired early on in the race. So what a race it was, ladies and gentlemen. Indeed, a big thank you to all 16 of our drivers for making this race absolutely magical, and in a huge congratulations to our podium finishers of Simply Steve in 3rd, Squilliam in 2nd, and of course making an 8 times winning streak, Knotavin, your winner for Night Racing. But those were the race results, subject to any Stewards' inquiries. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, it is, of course, now time for us to say goodbye to Sebring, and it is time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have sat there today and thought, you know what, I'd love to be on the gig because you've enjoyed the show so much and you do love an LMP2 machine or any machine, so long as you get to race in an absolutely thriving and enjoyable racing community, well, you are in the perfect place to join the Just 2 Idiots Championship Series. And to find out more about the J2ICS, as it's abbreviated to, you are more than welcome to head to our official website, the prime source of information, and that's at www.j2ics.com. And if you do go to our website, which is on screen now, where you've got one of the most straightforward websites to navigate there, Our homepage bringing you up to speed where it's all about at J2ICS, and you do have links to all of our rules, our regulations, our instant reports, also our championship standards, our schedule, and all you need to know to get on the grid with us. And feel free to join whether you're an esports professional all the way through to a rookie. We would love to see you join the Just Two Idiots Championship Series grid or our Cup Series grid, which also does run every so often in parallel. But of course, if you don't want to necessarily go to our website, where you can join the official Discord, the Beating Hearts of the community, invite link on screen, and that's the number one place to go to if you've got any questions for the staff or admin team. Indeed, you'll need to be part of the Discord if you want to get on the grid with us. But with that, ladies and gents, where we turn our attentions to next time, and with only now 2 rounds to go, next time out, we make our way all the way from the eastern side of the US of A to the western side. We are making our way to the west coast for the Californian state, and we will be just shy of San Francisco as we head to the circuit previously known as the Infineon Raceway or Sears Point, but now known as Sonoma Raceway. And in the hills, who exactly is going to prove the winner in a tricky circuit in round number 9? Because we will have all the racing action occur on Wednesday the 15th of April 2026. We invite you to come join us as if it were live on Thursday the 16th of April as we head into our penultimate round. And there, could we see Knotavin take the championship crown with a round to spare? He set himself up for success, no doubt about that. Whereas he might be leading the way and running away, we've got a very lively grid. Not just for the rest of the podium, but throughout the entirety of the top 10. And I suspect if Sebring's anything to go by today, Sonoma is only going to turn the action up to 11. So come join us next time as if it were live to see how the story continues. But until then, we have been the Just Two Idiots Championship Series. I've been your host and commentator, Paul Walsh. You've been tuning into a Paul Walsh production. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, as always, ladies and gentlemen, remember to stay on track. Good night.